Welcome. Sorry, everyone, trouble with buttons. Welcome to Sherlock Monthly. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are going on a biblioventure through the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Today's episode is The Adventure of the Missing Three-Quarter, and joining us for this episode are Erica Fair, new to the show. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
Awesome to have you. And our old friend, Max Magee. Hi, Max.
Howdy.
All ready to play. Max is ready to head out to the pitch, everyone. Um, welcome to this season of Sherlock Monthly. We began in 2023 as a weekly program, Sherlock Mondays, in which we deduced, deciphered, dissected Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes adventures, in a kind of conversational annotation in the order the stories were originally published. You can see all those episodes on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel, including now the special subscription-only series on the Hound of the Baskervilles, which is now free for everyone to watch. Max, you were a co-host on that. That's nice that we got to release that finally.
Yeah, what a great value too. That was $100, wasn't it, originally, or
Yeah,
120?
and you can start collecting the residuals now on the release to everyone. We have continued this biblioventure on a monthly basis as Sherlock Monthly. All the episodes are available on YouTube. You can find everything that we've done there on the playlists on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel. So, but I would also ask you to please consider making a donation to the Rosenbach or by becoming a member. This is, one of the ways that we get to do these shows for free is because we can help generate money for the Rosenbach to not only run programs, but also care for our collections. You can do this at our website, rosenbach.org. Your support helps us create programs like this and care for our collections. As I said already, I should stick to my script instead of just going off of it. Sherlock Monthly is also brought to you by the generous support of Lisa Washington and also this season, Belanger Books, publishers of all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. You can visit them today at Belanger Books. So I'm going to put that link in there too. Let me introduce my co-host for today. Erica Fair is a trial attorney and amateur historian in Minneapolis with a special interest in Victorian medicine. She received both her bachelor's and JD from the University of Minnesota, where she walked past the Anderson Library collection every day for 6 years. She is an active member of the Norwegian Explorers of Minnesota, where she is a frequent columnist for the Explorations newsletter and writes a medical history article each year for the Scion's Christmas Annual. And Maximilian Magee is the social chair of the Notorious Canary Trainers of Madison, Wisconsin. He leads a group known as Comrades of the Order and its spinoff Spode, Scion, Captain Basil's Mignonettes. He's a hyperactive member of the Hounds of the Internet, frequent visitor, and member of the Norwegian Explorers of Minnesota. He's also the Gopher Yeoman Purser of the Tourists International SS of Chicago. Max holds a BS in engineering mechanics and astronautics from the University of Wisconsin, has worked as a flight design engineer and flight controller at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, is currently a manager of software development at a local Madison software company. Max was also, as you know, if you've watched the shows before, he was a co-host on our special subscription show, Hound of the Baskervilles. He was also a co-host on A Christmas Carol and I don't know. It seems like plenty of things. Pickwick Papers, you were on our Pickwick Papers, Max. So I always love having you here. You can find Max's Sherlock origin story on one of the previous episodes that he's been on. So we won't ask him that. And instead, because Erica, this is your first time here, welcome.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear your Sherlock origin story. But before we get to that, in your bio, you mentioned walking past the Anderson Library. What is the
Yes.
significance of that for our Sherlockian world?
The Anderson Library is the facility that houses the University of Minnesota collections for Sherlock Holmes. So literally every day as I went from my dorm or where I was living to my classes, I was walking directly past that building. I was aware that there was a large repository of Sherlock Holmes related material there, but I never kind of had the boldness to go in and actually ask for a tour or to do anything special with the collections. That has since been remedied. But it was it was very interesting and a fun little thing that always kind of livened my day a little bit when I was going to and from classes to know that, hey, literally, 500 feet and to my right or to my left, here we go, is something, a passion that I've had for a long time, and it's great that there's other people that share it.
And that's a significant collection there. Was
Yes,
it John Bennett Shaw? Did he begin that with his collection, or was it before then? Or was he?
No,
not
James
quite.
Araldi was the first
Yes.
contributor there. Sorry, go ahead, Erica.
No, you're fine. No, the Bennett Shaw one was basically the second one.
Okay, that was the second one.
That and then there was a Philip Hench was the last one that kind of brought it into prominence and made it kind of the all of a sudden Minnesota is on the map as this incredible place to go and find all of these archives and all of these special collections.
Mhm. Is
Nobel
it
Prize winning Philip Hench,
Yes,
doctor at the Mayo Clinic.
yes,
is it manuscripts as well, or is that not really part of this collection?
they're
There are
manuscripts.
manuscripts.
Other manuscripts? Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. All righty. Well, Erica, so you walked past there all this time. Didn't think to go in and become a Sherlockian. Why? We don't know. But what is your first though connection with Sherlock Holmes, and how did you first encounter these stories? And
So in seventh grade, I think a lot of us had a unit on detective fiction as part of ordinary public school education, literature, and Sherlock Holmes was one of them. And I had a teacher who was particularly good about bringing in the AV cart whenever possible, avoid the actual reading and just get us interested in the movies and films. So I started by seeing some of the Granada adaptations in
wow, in
class.
school, that's
Yes,
awesome. Jeremy
yes.
Brett in school. That should be,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And I thought that this character was absolutely fascinating. I loved the kind of the mystique of who he was and what his origins were and how he could come to these unbelievable conclusions. At the same time, I had a strong interest in medicine at the time. So the fact that we had a doctor who was our narrator as well was something that appealed to me. And then I still have the original canon that I received for my 13th birthday. That was the only thing that I wanted. I just wanted a complete collection of those stories. I went through and I read them all, and I fell in love completely with this story and with this field. It actually also directly influenced me becoming an attorney because, as I said, I had an interest in medicine. I thought for a long time I was going to become a doctor, and then I took chemistry in 11th grade. That was not going to happen. I was not going to be a doctor. Um, and instead, I started looking back to, okay, well, I've built my whole childhood and with this dream, what am I going to do? I turned back to the things that really interested me. And one of the things by reading Holmes, I was like, I really like this kind of investigative spirit. I really like this idea of putting together cases and trying to figure out how things happened and what's a job that could put me in kind of the investigative spirit that doesn't require quite so much math and science. And going into prosecution ultimately is what
Hmm.
I chose to do for my career, and it's what I still do today. So Sherlock Holmes absolutely influenced me very, very strongly. It was a passion that I kept to myself for a very long time. I would, have opinions kind of on him entering the public domain and, the movies coming out and new adaptations, whatever. But I didn't really exercise the community part of it until a couple of years ago. Um, I joined the Norwegian Explorers. I got to talking to new people. I watched some adaptations that I hadn't previously that gave me things I really wanted to talk about. And I was able to find some connections with people who were just as interested in this topic as I was. And from
Mhm.
there, I've just sort of dove in headfirst and just made Sherlockiana now a really important part of my life. And I am so, so grateful that even though I'm late, I'm finally
Never too
here.
late.
It took me 20 years, but I am finally here now in the field, in the community, and getting to meet some of the best people in the world. This has really been extraordinary.
Erica, your arrival is neither early nor late. It is exactly on time.
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate
There you
that.
go. Max, did you have that when you were, were you always, I don't remember this, were you always aware of a Sherlockian community and had connected with them earlier? At a certain
No.
point, did suddenly,
No, I'm a lot like Erica in that I think I read some stories early on. I tried to do what you did around my 12th or 13th birthday, and I had received a copy of the canon, and I started with A Study in Scarlet. And by the time we got to the Great Alkaline Plain, I went, you know what? I'm gonna do that later. And then about 20 years later, I picked it back up again. And I was like, I should really give those another look. And, I skipped 2 decades in which I could have been having all this fun. And so, no, I consider those a couple of lost decades of Sherlockian hijinks. And I've gone to certain lengths, including, Erica, you may know, the program, the Sherlockian Siblings, where we connect neophyte, not necessarily young, but like new to the hobby Sherlockians with those wise and grizzled veterans of the Sherlockian wars, to help them learn the ropes and include them in all of the fun activities that it's sometimes hard to know even about upcoming events if you're not, in all of the email groups or a member of all of the science societies. And so I want to prevent, I feel like Scott Bakula in Quantum Leap. I'm trying to put right what once went wrong with my own experience and make sure that no one misses out on, the community that I think is so fun. Not necessarily the nationwide thing, but just local communities
yeah.
that are really the heart of the modern Sherlockian movement fandom.
Well, and if you live in a place where you can't, where you have to travel in order to find communities and do that, well, at least, we can provide some of that here online for you to do. And also, I would encourage you all to look for more online groups as well that do this, that connect Sherlockians online, as well as go to places that have meetings, science
Mhm.
societies. We had our Sons of the Copper Beaches meeting yesterday.
Missed you guys.
We had our dinner. Yeah, we missed having you back because you were here. You were at the last one, and
Hmm.
I wish we had you on hand for this. But it was a great gathering and a nice dinner. And one of the presenters, Michael Struck, talked his paper to present was on shag tobacco. It's like, oh, I love, I was home. There was, this is
Very
great.
nice.
Can't all presentations be about Sherlock smoking, please? Uh,
Did you retire to the basement of the Racket Club?
I did not, but and it's also that too. Like, I'm smoking, I smoke at home. It's great that I get to do the show and smoke while I do it. There is that annoyance that I have to listen to people talk about smoking and I can't smoke while you're talking about it. That's
Right. You should have him give it again in the basement. So
yeah,
that for those that don't know, it's the Philadelphia Racket Club that
yeah.
is the traditional home of the Copper Beaches. And you do twice annual dinners, one in October and one in March,
One in April.
April. And formerly, this was held in this beautiful, I don't know what, Italianate ceramic, like it almost has like a Bavarian feel.
Yeah, I think they're Mercer tiles, Henry Mercer tiles he was an artisan from the
Mhm.
early 20th century, yeah, near in Doylestown, near Philadelphia. I think it's a Trumbauer design room too, though.
It's
I think Harsh
gorgeous. It's
Trumbauer designed it. Yeah.
very, yeah, and it's ornate and wonderful. And that's where the dinner used to be, but you all grew it. And so now that area is actually a hermetically sealed smoking room,
The Racket Club made it a cigar lounge. Yeah.
which is fantastic.
We were there
But
last time.
they need to move the dinner back down there so you and the rest of the folks can enjoy a pipe,
Yeah.
of
Like
shag while you listen to
like
the talk.
three of us at the dinner that wanted smoke, so nobody smokes anymore. That's okay. I'm happy to
It's
take
like the
all the
kids' table,
tobacco.
but for smokers.
Yeah. Um, well, Max, though, you're also well attired today for this story, our the Rugger episode of Sherlock Monthly. You have a rugby background, I
I
think.
do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah, I played rugby in high school. I wouldn't exactly say competitively. In my junior year, our public high school, founded a club team. And I think we fielded 17 players. This is rugby union rules. I only recently found out that there was a rugby union and a rugby association. Uh, Different rules, but not really. Like internationally, I think rugby union has taken over. Where you have 15 players, you have forwards and backs. You have halfbacks. I was generally a halfback or a wing. And so that means that I was pretty good at ball handling, but I was a skinny, tall, gangly guy. So not the greatest at like just knocking people out of the way.
Didn't
And
have the
so
giant neck,
yeah, yeah,
bowl ready to
those would be
go.
like kind of
Yeah,
like your linebackers or linemen on a
yeah.
football team. Those are the forwards. They're the ones that are powerhouses. They're the ones that are built like a bowling ball. And your backs, including three quarters, are the ones that are fast. We're out there, and I say we because this was, kind of the role I was born to play. You're fast, but you have to be able to take a hit. You have to be able to deliver it. That's the idea, is that you're gonna make contact. But so my first year, we won 0 games, and that's okay. It was our developmental year. We didn't have all the rules quite down either, so there were a lot of penalties. And then our second year, we got infinitely better. I was so each the thing about being a captain on a rugby team is that you're captaining a game. You might be the skipper, who's sort of like the scrum half. That's the position I played in my senior year. That's like a quarterback. They're the one that call the plays, distribute the ball. Strategically, you're kind of closest to the coach.
Hmm.
And so you yeah, like I said, we got infinitely better in that we won exactly 1 game my senior year.
A hundred
So,
percent improvement
oh,
over
infinite.
law of law.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
divide by zero error
there you
number
go.
of improvements. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. The fun thing about rugby is that unlike football, you're not enemies, you're friends on the pitch. And so
Yeah.
like the rivalry is real, but you don't like hate each other. You're especially with rugby, it's kind of a niche sport. And so, we relate to one another as this sort of like, we're all in this together. We got to keep this club going. And we would have meals at the end of the game with the other team. And this is a tradition that goes to club, like college level club. It goes to the amateurs, the pros, is that you're all colleagues. And
Yeah.
that's the big difference, is that you're not just pawns in this thing. You're basically the player, owner, coach, whatever. Like you're all involved in it, and it's a community. And in many ways, it's like the Sherlockian community. It's all kind of led by the members.
Did you ever continue to play or follow
I
it in
played a
any
couple of
way?
games when I got to Houston. They had club teams, and I was too small. There were 300 pounders that I was up
Yeah,
against, and I just couldn't compete. So,
yeah.
no, I mean, it's people who really played at a semi-professional level. But I'm a big rugby fan. I'll watch the sevens world tournaments, especially when the United States is competitive. The American women's team, the Eagles, um, I believe they were in third place in the
Well
World Cup
named. Well
last
named.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah, yep. And so, yeah, I mean, women's rugby is not nearly as big as men's rugby. But I got to say, in the United States, a lot like soccer, the women have had more success in many instances than the men.
and is there a team named with a Sherlockian name? Is that
There's a Watson. Well, okay, so you're referring to one that is the current cap I'm wearing. This is the Chicago
Chicago
Hounds,
Hounds?
and their mascot is a spectral hound, not just a regular hound. And they were unaware, as far as I know, of the Sherlockian connection with the
Well,
hounds
he's
of
not
the
really
Baskerville.
spectral. He just got a little phosphorescence
That's
spread
right.
on him. That's all.
Right. And actually the shirt I'm wearing is actually just a Guinness shirt, but it's rugby, Irish rugby themed. No team associated with it. It's just yay beer, yay
Yeah,
sports. But I did actually pull this one out of the closet. This is a real
there you go.
rugby jersey. So it's a long sleeve because you play in all weather. You have a collared shirt because we're fancy, but the buttons on it are rubberized. They're actually like a plastic, so it's
Oh,
not
I
going
didn't
to
realize
stab
that.
you when you get
Yeah.
tackled. And the stripes are not my colors. These are actually the colors of our hated rival. No, our rival, West High School. My high school was East, so of course we thought
How
we were
did you get?
rivals.
Did you like take it off someone?
No,
How
this
did
I
you
got
get
this
your
used. This is my
rival's
this is
shirt?
the one that I paint in because it's, West. So, and I
I
even pulled
mean,
out some shorts. Rugby wears short shorts, and they are
short
not your
shorts.
typical like nylon.
Yeah.
They're like cotton because you are lifted, you are hoisted by your petard, as they say,
Yeah.
um, by your uh,
By your
whatever's
shorts,
girding
they
your loins, let's say.
grab you and pull you forward, right?
Yeah, so when you have a side out, when the ball goes out of bounds, there's a line out where the hooker, which is an actual official term,
Whoa, there's a hooker?
there's a hooker.
All right.
What a
He or
sport.
she, in my case, he would throw the ball in supposedly down a neutral tunnel, but with the strategy that it arcs and it comes down just perfectly for where your team is going to have the hoisted person.
They,
Anyway,
they,
it's
they
it's a
go
very
real
silly
high
sport.
and yeah, they get
Yeah.
yeah. So
But this
well,
is one of the most spectacular of all sports. Like the most spectacular view is a man being atomically wedgied by his teammates up into the air to retrieve and pluck the ball out. So
well, if you're just joining us now, everyone, welcome to Rugby Monthly from the
there you go.
Rosenback. We'll continue to mention rugby as it occurs in the story today, but I'm glad we got a little background on it. And I prepped because I was in Edinburgh for 2 weeks. We had a great Rosenback trip where we got to see some great special collections. Um, and then I had a week on my own, which was basically visiting as many pubs as I could every single day while also then seeing other really cool collections and rare books. And I watched a match for dinner one night at Tuchter's Pub in the West End of Edinburgh. It was right on the TV there, the big crowd, watching it. And that's the most I've ever watched of a rugby. Like, I mean, I saw a big, like the whole dinner time I was there. I saw like a half I watched the entire first half. They're in halves, right? So I watched the
Mhm.
entire first half and then a little bit into the second. So, but Munster was killing Leinster, so I don't need to see the end of this. They're getting killed. Um, but uh, but also I mentioned the Edinburgh trip because part of it was we went to this great collection at the Blackie House Museum, collection founded by William Zachs, and he's got this great collection of Walter Scott and a phenomenal connection to Robert Burns, and these are some of the kinds of things we were interested in. We saw a Beethoven. He's got a Beethoven musical manuscript, Beethoven's own hand.
Hmm.
Beethoven at one time was hired to write 150 songs, and some of the lyrics that he were given were Robert Burns lyrics,
Wow.
poems to put to music. It just boggles my mind that Beethoven was hired to write songs for people to play, and as a just as a songwriter could be hired today.
Yeah.
Um, but also in the Blackie House collection is our 400. Well, the Veiled Lodger manuscript lives there, but it's actually away in an exhibition right now, so I couldn't see that.
Hmm.
But 400 volumes from Arthur Conan Doyle's personal library are there, and I got to page through some of these and take notes. I wasn't allowed to take pictures, unfortunately, but he did. But I did. Bill Zacks gave me time to go through stuff at my, and I was paging through Walter Scott, a copy of Walter Scott's journal that Doyle loved Scott. I think Doyle wanted to be Scott in some ways as a writer, and his comments all through about Scott's life. And then there was a couple volumes of the Robert Louis Stevenson letters that were published in the early 19th century, and Doyle's, or early 20th century. Doyle's writing all of his, notes, and actually four of the letters in that collection were letters Stevenson wrote to Doyle, so
Right.
it was included in that collection.
Neat.
But just the little notes personal notes he wrote about Stevenson. It's just utterly, it was what a treat to see some of these things. Uh,
Doyle drew some pictures too in his letters to Stevenson, didn't he? Wasn't there one about a pirate ship or a pirate island? I'm trying to remember.
Robert Louis,
When Doyle and Stevenson were corresponding.
Did they write about a map or something? I don't know.
I thought he drew like a cartoon or something about like pirates and pirated editions or something,
May
but
have.
maybe not.
I can't remember now. So Stevenson had some nice things to say about Sherlock, but it was kind of almost like, oh, these kind of cute stories things he had written or something like that. And I'm not sure how well Doyle took that. So you have some background audience there, Max, today.
Yeah, that is my wife, Andrea. Say hello. Hi.
Does she know we're live? There we go.
I think she does. This
Yeah.
is her office too, though.
There you go. So I got to see some of that stuff in Edinburgh, and it was quite extraordinary. And I hope to bring you some more things like that in the future, and be able to share some images and things like that of some other Doyle adventures we get to have in the future. So let us. We've chatted about rugby and traveling to Edinburgh enough. Let us start talking about at least things related to this story, which is the original publication in the Strand. Were you ever in Edinburgh, Erica? Or were we just in
Yes.
Scotland?
Yes, I've been to Edinburgh. I really liked Stirling, which is the midpoint town between Edinburgh and Glasgow. Probably my favorite city in the world. But Edinburgh is just an absolute gem. I loved it there. The people are fantastic. It's so much to see. It's spectacular. I would strongly recommend anybody to go visit.
There you go, everybody.
Yeah,
Recommendations from me and Erica. Go to Scotland.
absolutely.
I want to go back. Let's look at the first publication of this story. First in the Strand magazine in August 1904. Here's the cover, advertising at the top here. Sarah Bernhardt, Heights of Celebrities. They've been it's for the last several issues now. They've been publishing Sarah Bernhardt's memoirs, and people really, love this stuff and were interested in it. But I think they all wanted more salacious material than Bernhardt was ever going to include in the Strand magazine. And of course, you see Sherlock Holmes up top here, and we get the finest view in the kingdom, not pertaining to Sherlock. There's actually an article in it featuring paintings of British landscapes and all about how beautiful they can be. But that article really speaks more to the way that the Strand magazine can produce these beautiful illustrations now. The technology's there to really get well detailed, it's still in black and white, but well detailed illustrations that people can enjoy in a world where that it's that in and of itself in a magazine, those beautiful pictures provide entertainment for people. But there is an art, and then the story begins with, as usual, and it's the first story in the issue. So they lead their issues with Sherlock Holmes. So when you turn in, this will be the first thing you see after I think some advertisements. But is the pageant illustration for I mean, it's not the most it's until the end. It's the scene that's got the most thing going on in it, maybe. And it's with the Pompey, the dog here, as the carriage goes past. Paget makes the most use of trying to create dramatic scenes in stories we've noticed in the last couple as well um, that contain a lot of scenes where there's not a lot of drama going on. And this is a good one to start with. But one of the other articles in this issue I thought was interesting, and you can find these online. If you look up Strand Magazine from 1904, you can find whole issues of it bound into volume editions on, archive.org or on Google Books. And this is an article. There was an article in it called Inches and Eminence about men. Um, and but what it is, it's about how tall they are and how that might relate to their achievements in life. Um, and and they have charts like down here they have sovereigns of countries and how tall they are. See on the side here is 5 feet, 6 feet. The King of Belgium was very tall. Um, Edward the Seventh is he's only a little over 5.5 feet. Poor King of Italy is like 5 feet tall. And so here's the Kaiser, the Tsar, Emperor of Japan right here. Um, and then they have statesmen, soldiers, and like almost no one is over 6 feet in all these things. I mean, it shows you how times have changed now. Now it's, it's not unusual, at least for men in America or England, in the English speaking world, to be over 6 feet tall. Um, Judges, and here's why I'm sharing this. Look, authors. The tallest author that they chose, Sir A. Conan Doyle, right on the end here. And he's just over 6 feet, they have him. So I don't know. I guess that's 6'1", something like that he is. I'm not I don't remember exactly how tall he is, but
6 feet even with 1 inch fringe.
there you go. Sir Anthony Hope, Isaac Zangwill, Israel Zangwill they have here, A.W. Pinero, Hall Caine, the dedicatee of the novel Dracula, is right here. Bram Stoker's very good friend, Hall Caine. Thomas Hardy, Rudyard Kipling, J.M. Barrie, and I thought J.M. Barrie was short. Boy, Mr. Alfred Austin. Of course, you all remember Alfred Austin. Nobody remembers Alfred Austin. Actually, the poet laureate right after Tennyson. You don't want to follow Tennyson as poet laureate, let me tell you. And he did, and everyone promptly forgot him. But even at the time, it was controversial. People didn't think he was a very good poet, but nobody really wanted the job at that point. That's when it really came down to who would be poet laureate, and people were like, "Oh, not me." But Alfred Austin took the job, and there he is. But there you go, Doyle, tall, um, the tallest of the ones that they featured. So, all righty. They could have chosen Wilde too, and he would have been even taller than Doyle. I'm pretty certain Wilde was taller than Doyle. So, um, I thought that was fascinating. Inches and eminence. How tall are you, and how much eminent does that make you? Well, anyway.
I recently saw a QI episode where they were debunking the myth again that Napoleon was below average height. And they mentioned that Lord Nelson was only, I think he was 5 feet even. And one of the greatest comments there, like just off the cuff, those comedians are so good. Well, that's why they had to put him on such a high column.
Well, yeah, and yes, and I'm sure you know all the Napoleon being super short isn't true, and that's just something invented by the propagandists in, England and fighting him, that he was a little guy and he was almost average height. So of the time, somewhere
He was
between
above
five
average. He was 5'7". The
five
average
seven. The average
European
was
was
five.
5'6".
There you go. So, not a little man. That Napoleon syndrome that people talk about, well, maybe that just means you want to rule the world. It's got nothing to do with your height. Um, Collier's, the Collier's issue, we'll share that next, came out not until November. The Strand was in August, and as I mentioned in the last episode, the Colliers had kind of took a pause in the summer for Sherlock stories and waited to the end. And of course, on the cover, hey, if there's a dog in this story, we're gonna show it. Everybody loves dogs in Sherlock Holmes stories, and there's Pompey leading Sherlock with a deer stalker. I love it. Because he's outside, and why wouldn't he have a deer stalker? Although did he? Oh my gosh, did he have it in the Strand? I forget.
Not in the
No, he doesn't. He's just wearing that
no.
Homburg
Mhm.
looking hat or whatever it is. Yeah. So he doesn't have it. Paget missed an opportunity to have Sherlock in the deer stalker, even though he was out tramping in the countryside. He's right. He should have had it on. So, and Paget usually includes that, even when Doyle doesn't even mention it. He knows that he's out in the countryside. He gives him the deer stalker.
And the tweed, it's the lovely tweed jacket too that he's not in Inverness because he doesn't need it. This is February now, so it's warm.
Yeah. And people do love dogs in well, people love dogs, but people love dogs in Sherlock stories. And you mentioned Toby. As soon as you say Toby to any Sherlockian group, everybody's like, "Oh, Toby!" Um, in Sign of Four, another great, tracker dog. Um, and I think there's 20 dogs in Sherlock stories. I think that's the number I keep coming up with, although I couldn't count them all myself. I mean, the Hound obviously is the most famous, and Toby. There's Carlo in the Copper Beeches. Uh, um, there's the dog killed by Watson or Holmes when they test him and study in Scarlet. The dog's going to die anyway. They're literally putting him out of their misery to
I
test him.
think there's two in Hound. Isn't there a collie that's found dead at the
Oh yeah,
bottom of
what's
the
the
mine
collie's
shaft?
name?
Uh,
I forget his name. That escapes. Yes, you're right. There's two in that. Um,
there's another one
Plus
through a
Mortimer Spaniel.
plate glass window in Lion's Mane. Just not good
yeah.
for spaniels.
Which one did you say, Erica?
There was also Mortimer Spaniel that
Yeah, that's
bit
it.
on the stick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's the curious incident of the dog who did nothing in the nighttime, of course. But yeah, Doyle likes putting dogs in his stories. As a dog lover himself, he was. And but that is the cover, the Frederick Dorr Steele cover. And in this issue, here is he goes, there's always a nice title panel illustration, and here they're all in on the rugby. So that's why we were talking about it. Because come on, this is like if you open this up, it's like, what is this, a sports story? Here they are running. I like the hedge they have in the background here as they're
I think that's an audience,
so is it?
potentially.
Oh my
You
gosh,
know
I
what?
think
No, it
you're
has to be
right.
a hedge. You're right.
Oh, is it? I don't know. It could be yeah, it could be a
That goes
stand
to the
audience
left
member.
side as well. I think
Yeah,
that's like a hedgerow
I don't know.
or a
But
wall.
but even the title letter, they put another rugby player here. This is repeated later in the story in the continuation. Um, and we'll get to this illustration later because this is a fantastic illustration. And this is almost a perfect example of how at this point in the game, I mean, Paget's only got a few more stories that he'll illustrate, but Dorr Steele doing these in America, these Colliers, they are far more interesting than the ones that Paget is producing towards the end here, as this one is here. But we'll get to this one later. What I am always fascinated by in Collier's issues are the advertisements. Jello right here up top. Uh,
Gold medal winner,
yeah.
St. Louis Fair.
Mhm.
All
Love
these wonderful ones. Nervules. Max, you pointed this one out to me earlier today.
Nervules, the blood maker.
I don't know what they were giving to people, if there was anything in this, if it
It's
was
probably
just
just straight
kind
up
of,
lead.
yeah, some kind of drug maybe to make yourself feel better. So, but this one I thought was fascinating, right in the center here, from Costin's Ostrich Farm, 17-inch plumes. Like, and I'm thinking, really? There's a market just for ostrich plumes? And then if you think, I mean, this Comtesse plume is 17 inches long, made of the very best black or white plumes taken from male birds. Will stand repeated curlings, is full of life and beauty. And the ostrich plume was a big part of women's fashion in the late Victorian and into the 20th century. Even so much as I found this book from 1912, just a little bit later, but of course, if dealing with some of the same fashion here, you could buy a book on the art of ostrich plume making. And what you do is you get your ostrich plumes, and then what are you going to do with them? You got to know how to clean them. You got to know how to dye them. Information worth $50 to any woman. I don't know what this book costs, probably $1 or something. And I mean, just the table of contents, how to dye them, how to clean them, make willow plumes, sew plumes together, wire plumes, make hat bands, all the, And
Page eight. Page eight is immediately what I thought of because in my lifetime, I have seen a funeral procession that had those horses with ostrich plumes on
yeah,
a four in hand, and they were all dyed black. I didn't know they were ostrich plumes until, thinking back on it, but that is still something that I think there is some
yeah.
market for.
And by 1912, I think that, that fashion, right, that for people wearing, memorial clothing and those, fancier, processions for funerals has mostly gone away. Very much bigger in the Victorian age, but in the Victorian age, it would have been a very big deal. Yes, you need to know how to dye everything black in the Victorian age, so because you need mourning clothes. Um, uh, but there you go. So I'm just looking real quick. Did it mention anything about memorial stuff? But it did not. So this is just for fashion. If you want a big black plume, ostrich plume on you. So I've never worn feathers. So, but
I'm just so glad it doesn't have collect urine as the first step because for about 1,000 years, that was always the first step in any like millinery or dyeing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's much more pleasant these days.
Yes.
yes, much easier. We hope. So, well, that is
It's about
what.
all the time we have left.
Yeah,
So,
let's I
oh
think we
wait,
should maybe get along to the story here. Enough of these the ostrich plume makings. There's a manuscript for the story, but before we do that, there is a manuscript for the story, and I always love mentioning the manuscripts. As you know, the Rosenbach has the manuscript for the Empty House, and this is one of the things that we have great collections of manuscripts. And there is a manuscript that is in the British Library. And at the time, I don't know if any more have made it there, but at the time, the British Library had no Conan Doyle manuscripts until like the 1960s or something like that. At whatever point is when they acquired this one. And here's the first page of it. Um, uh, and it's the usual Conan Doyle manuscript where it's completely legible and you can read it, unlike other author manuscripts. And that's not because it's a fair copy manuscript. This is the way he wrote the story and made his corrections, sometimes at the moment, sometimes maybe a little later when on a read through. But this is the way it listed. At the top of this, you can see that 8,000 words was maybe written by the typist, most likely, when Doyle would give these to a typist to have three copies made up, one for the Strand, one for Collier's, and one to hang on for himself. But he would also hang on to the manuscripts, and he hung on to this manuscript and all the ones in The Return of Sherlock Holmes, because then he had them, 9 or 10 of them he had bound, especially in vellum, and this is one of those. It's also the one that we have at the Rosenbach and the Empty House. Um, so he could sell them later to find the capricious millionaire, as he put it, that would, buy his manuscripts. Well, he never did. He donated them to charity things. And this one, though, was offered in an auction with other manuscripts of his by Doyle in 1923.
hmm.
And that capricious millionaire, William Randolph Hearst, who you may all know, the inspiration for Charles Foster Kane. Uh, Hearst bought it for the unheard of sum of $130. It was
I
not
heard
it,
of that.
yeah. Yeah, it didn't sell for a lot. Even at the time. That's not a lot of money. It's a good value for a near contemporary manuscript by a famous author. But it's not a big deal. And Doyle wasn't going to sell his manuscripts for $1 million. I mean, he knew that as well, but I don't know if he thought that they would, get that little, but $130. It's not chump change at the time in 1923, but it's not a great deal. Anyway, Hearst also brought the Valley of Fear manuscript in that same auction and had that. At one point, Hearst had at least 4 other stories in his collection, but Hearst collected everything. It's not like Hearst was a Sherlockian collector. He just collected everything. He vacuumed up all art, all books, all manuscripts. He loved collecting and putting things together. And when he finally got in money troubles, like in the 1930s, he's had to start just selling everything off that he had, just warehouses full of things that he had bought. And he just sold them all. He was just gradually selling them all at auctions. This manuscript, The Missing Three Quarter, Scribner's bought it, and Scribner's, the publishers, used to also deal in rare books and manuscripts, and they bought it. They had it for a time, and then famous Sherlockian Vincent Starrett owned it for a little while. He got into money trouble. He had to sell it back to Scribner's, and then later, Lou David Feldman bought it. A great famous book collector and book dealer, much like Dr. Rosenbach was. Founder of the House of LDF, Lou David Feldman. And the House of LDF is a parody of is a pun on his name. His initials are LDF. He bought it, and then he sold it back to Starrett at one point, and then I think it wound back at Scribner. A few other collectors, somebody owned it and decided, hey, wouldn't it be great to give a manuscript to the British Library? And these book collectors all donated money, and they got other people to donate money, and so it went to the British Library as a gift from Sherlockians and these, specific book collectors. Edgar W. Smith of the Baker Street Irregulars is named on that document, donating it to the British Library so they could have one. I don't know if the British Library has any others, has since acquired any more. But
who has it checked out right now?
not,
Is it not that type of library?
yeah, not that. Yeah, I don't think you can check it out, but you could see it. The British Library offers appointments for people
That's
to
cool.
see. But I'm sure if we go to the bestofsherlock.com, Randall Stock's website, you could quickly find out if there's any other manuscripts at the British Library. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Ed talks a lot. Let us get onto the story where I didn't bring onto this show a trial attorney and Max to talk all day. Other people on this show will talk a lot, I am certain, and that will be fine by me. In spite of my cough, I will be happy to sit back and smoke while you guys talk about this story. I'll kick us off in that in the opening here. The story opens. We were fairly accustomed to see weird telegrams at Baker Street, but I have a particular recollection of one which reached us on a gloomy February morning some 7 or 8 years ago and gave Mr. Sherlock Holmes a puzzled quarter of an hour. This cough has hung on since Edinburgh. Old Reeky gave me a cough. I've been coughing all week. And gave Mr. Sherlock Holmes a puzzled quarter of an hour, and it was, please await me, terrible misfortune, right wing 3/4 missing, indispensable tomorrow, Overton. I get the, and I love that weird telegram that Watson calls us, we're telephone to rise, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, this happens all the time in stories. Well, I actually not. I looked it up, and I thought there would be more stories that opened up with like a telegram or a letter, and it's only a few. The Noble Bachelor opens with the letter from Lord St. Simon, who seems to have misplaced his new wife, and he has to get some help. Violet Hunter sends a letter to Sherlock. It's not a telegram. The Naval Treaty is a letter from Percy Phelps to Watson. The Dancing Men, Hilton Cubitt sent a letter. A couple stories, Watson gets a telegram, one from Holmes, one in the Reigate Squires telling him Holmes is sick. But like it's a rare thing to start a case like this, and I thought it was going to be something usual. It seems like a fairly, cliched way to start a story, but it actually hadn't happened.
There's a lot of stories that start with like a calling card that was left
Yeah,
behind. or some item that was left behind by a visitor, like
But yeah,
yeah.
more stories start with the client coming right to the place,
Mhm.
visiting them,
A
than
hat, a walking stick.
yeah.
Yeah, it tends to be either something dramatic and it's super memorable, or it's something that allows Holmes right away to showcase some of the deductive powers.
Yeah. And this is weird, as Watson says, because it is. It's oddly like, what does this mean? It's not explained. And if you don't know anything about rugby, as I didn't before, now I'm almost an expert after watching a game and listening to Max. Um, uh,
Speaking of weird,
you wouldn't know what this is referring to. So, and Holmes doesn't,
it
because
is intentionally impenetrable, by the
yes.
way. Even as a rugby aficionado, I found myself squinting and going, "What?"
Yeah.
So,
The
yeah.
the Burt Cools adaptation with Clive Marrison has a discussion between Holmes and Watson about whether this might involve a pigeon, that maybe a pigeon's wing has been clipped and there's a race coming up, and oh no, maybe that's what the problem is.
I
So
like it.
yeah, certainly there's a plenty of confusion.
All right, so this is my one. I found it. We were done with the mystery. Found him.
Oh, there you go. There's the missing three quarters.
Easy.
Bingo. So we were at a meeting at the Copper Beaches meeting last night. Somebody had lost their like had their name tag, and I was like, "Where the heck's my name tag?" Couldn't find it. Retrace steps where and it was asking people and nobody, and it was just like the most ridiculous thing. And that
It's an
if
adventure.
there's one place where if you lose something, something goes missing, a bunch of Sherlockians ought to be able to find it. It was never found.
Oh no. It's in somebody's
We
pocket for
could
sure.
not crack the case of the missing name tag. So
I
that
have
was
a solution to that
unfortunate.
too. Just write a new one.
Yeah, that's exactly what the solution was. Um, where that name tag is, oh God knows. So anyway, and then so this weird thing, but now Watson starts talking about these the stagnant days that they're living in. And things have been very slow with it. Do you have a text there with you, Erica?
I do.
Do you want to read that? Things had indeed been very slow, and then I'll ask you about that.
Things had indeed been very slow with us, and I had learned to dread such periods of inaction, for I knew by experience my companion's brain was so abnormally active it was dangerous to leave it without material upon which to work. For years I had gradually weaned him from that drug mania which had threatened once to check his remarkable career. Now I knew that under ordinary conditions he no longer craved for this artificial stimulus, but I was well aware that the fiend was not dead, but sleeping. And I have known that sleep was a light one, and the waking near, when in periods of idleness I have seen the drawn look upon Holmes' ascetic face, and the brooding of his deep-set and inscrutable eyes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Watson's afraid he's going to go back and become a drug user,
absolutely.
or continue to be, because it's not certain that he's not a drug user still.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a remarkable way to begin. A, because we haven't talked in the canon about drugs for quite some time. We haven't seen sort of this evidence of there being, an overwhelming addiction that is in danger of checking his career and causing some type of crisis here. But it's interesting. Watson is very ahead of his time in understanding kind of the nature that addiction is a disease of relapse, and it's a disease of, you're never fully cured from it. It's something that generally is going to be with you your whole life. It's going to be something that's going to pop up again and again, no matter how many years of sobriety or abstinence you have, it's still going to be something that you struggle with. The fact that he says that he treated it primarily by weaning Holmes off of it probably was the best way to treat something like that. For a long time, the prevailing theory on treating addiction was to give someone the what was considered the opposite drug, right? So if someone was addicted to cocaine, oh great, we'll give them morphine. That'll solve the problem because that's a downer. Well, what
Heroin
of
and
course
cocaine.
happens? You end up cross addicted to both, and you just go back and forth and round, and unfortunately, it doesn't end well much for anybody. So Watson, by just kind of tempering him back, probably giving him some injections of morphine to ease some of the withdrawals and some of the problems he would have gone through, that's probably a halfway decent treatment given the times. So credit to Watson on that, both on his insight generally and in the treatment that he prescribed.
This hasn't. We might not actually have to go back to Man with the Twisted Lip before, there's like it's something Watson begins with dealing with Holmes in the very first story in Study in Scarlet that he will take this, and it's in Sign of Four as well, the first two novellas, and then it kind of you don't hear much about it, and I think you do in Twisted Lip because it's all part of the opium smoking and
Hmm.
it gets mentioned. But I don't think we've had it since then. And so I see Doyle kind of reminding us here that, like, hey, remember that Bohemian character I created that had this issue with, taking cocaine? This is still the guy. Um, but but it seems to me that it's not just some cool thing, not necessarily cool, but some odd, slightly dangerous thing that this Bohemian guy might do. It's now Watson's talking about this is, very dangerous, right?
Yeah, it makes a character dangerous too, that he's skirting mortality and that he's using this as palliative for his other eccentricity. Great word, Madeline, by the way. He's an eccentric character and he has I don't know if I'd call it mental illness, but like he has definitely some habits and some quirks that make it so that his mind rebels against stagnation, right? It's a revving car engine that it can tear
Yeah.
itself apart. And I also wanted to bring up, since we're going into the cocaine fields, there's this brilliant theory that Holmes used Freud to convince Holmes that cocaine wasn't necessary,
Yeah.
etc. The young upstart author Nicholas Meyer,
Nicola
he's current
Meyer?
yeah, Meyer. He's
Yeah,
on
I'm
tour, I
not.
think, right now
Yeah,
for,
I don't
I don't think it's this book.
know.
I think it's a newer one.
Yeah, it's actually great that Nicholas Meyer is back writing Sherlock Holmes again for the last, few years.
Have you
Um,
had him on here?
I've not. No.
That'd be a good
One of
one.
these days, yeah. So, the some Jody asked in the chat, that was there some reason behind Doyle giving Sherlock a cocaine addiction? Madeline had a good answer right off the bat. It's him making Holmes more bohemian, more eccentric, and I find that it's just uh it's 1890, 1887, 1890. It's not seen as that hard. Like it's not the same level of danger that we see now as they saw then. Plenty of people then saw it. It's quite okay. It's you can just dabble as long as you just dabble in it. It's fine.
Yeah.
And
There,
Yeah.
there
we
was
know
a popular
Dangerous enough
product
to
out
take.
for a
Yeah.
while, Vin Mariani, that literally
Mhm.
was cocaine dissolved in wine. And it
Yeah,
was a popular beverage. Coca-Cola was developed initially as kind of a response to that. If you didn't want to drink alcohol, but you still wanted your cocaine boost. Uh,
If you well, like teetotaler, you could
yeah,
get your cocaine
exactly.
without the alcohol.
Exactly. So yeah, the attitudes were very relaxed for quite some time.
It was a good anesthetic too, like
Yes.
topical. It's still used in some circumstances where patients don't have a tolerance to other topical anesthetics. Is
Yeah.
use what you
And
can. Ophthalmology, I think in particular, still has
yeah.
cocaine solutions that they use.
And the ane in cocaine is the same as Novocaine.
Hmm.
It's the same anesthetic. It's an analgesic. So yeah, interesting.
all right. Well, Watson's worried that Holmes is going to start shooting up again, and but luckily this weird telegram has come to end the stagnation that they've had, and here comes Cyril Overton busted into the room, 16 stone of solid bone and muscle. Um, Much like Conan Doyle busting into the room here. 16 stone? Quickly, anybody? 224 pounds. So believe me, I had to do the math. I had to well, actually, there's a stone the pounds calculator you can hit on online. So I didn't even have to I didn't have to put it into a regular calculator times 14. It's just there you go. 224 pounds. Not that big, but
Here, Watson is trying to keep Holmes from being stoned, and there's 16 of them walking in the room. That's my two.
so but Doyle was large like that. He was like 220, 6 foot. So and very athletic and muscular as he was doing all kinds of sports. And here comes Cyril Overton busting into the room. And he tells us that he was referred by Stanley Hopkins again. Um, the young, promising inspector from Scotland Yard that Watson called him in uh, Black Peter. And you were on that Black Peter show,
I
Maddox,
was.
with Glenn Moranker, speaking of manuscript collectors. And that's the first time we see Stanley Hopkins. Then he was in the last episode, in the last story, Golden Pince-Nez. And we'll see him again next week in Abbey Grant. Like suddenly Doyle was like, I guess I'm tired of Lestrade. Let's have a new police guy.
Or he couldn't remember the guy's name. I
Yeah,
mean,
there you go.
honestly,
What was
you know,
that
he
name of
didn't.
that guy?
Yeah.
Stanley Hopkins. That's fine. Um, but I think Hopkins this must make him come in second to Lestrade in appearances. I think Lestrade's in like 7 or 8, and now Hopkins is been in this. So this is the second that well, he's in two mentioned in this, and then he's in another one to come. But and it's interesting that he isn't in this, but still merits a mention. Like
Mhm.
that for me, he's in Doyle's mind still. That I'm kind of perpetuating this kind of recurring character that will appear. And then I think after next week, I think he's gone.
Well, and then Lestrade
After the
comes
next.
back, right? And Lestrade becomes the
Yeah,
more
and he was
sympathetic.
in between. He was already in Six Napoleons, which is in
Yeah.
between these stories. So he
But
didn't.
it's
He
it's a
didn't
very
really
different
forget them.
relationship that they have after that point. Like that's the thing is pre-hiatus, Holmes and the Metropolitan Police Force, the Constabulary, not congenial. Like they were not really co-equal branches here. They were one had contempt for the other, one was pompous. I mean, actually they were both pompous, right? And that Holmes always got the better of them. And then post hiatus, there's a very different relationship between the police and or the official police force and Holmes. And there's a lot more respect going both
Yeah,
ways. And I don't know. I kind of like the pre-hiatus better.
yeah. Well, it's not surprising that Hopkins doesn't want this. I mean, so the guy's missing. Like that's not like
Mhm.
and it was last night he left, and now you're
Right.
there. That's not. This isn't a criminal case yet for the police. They can't do anything, but obviously he recommends the Sherlock, which also makes it an odd case. Like it's odd that this guy has disappeared, and Sherlock likes the unusual, the odd things. Um,
Can I put the question that I put to you earlier out there? This is a rehash of a previous story plot. And I wonder if everyone makes the connections. You know, I think you did, Ed,
did
but
I
not
have I already made the
you
connection?
haven't said it, but I'm pretty sure you've got it. So this whole plot line was done, I think, better and more dramatically, and there were much more serious crimes involved in a previous installation of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I wonder, which can you figure out which one I'm thinking of?
Now that you're mentioning crimes, now I'm not so sure. First, I thought maybe you were talking about Noble Bachelor.
Oh, no, Lauren's got it in the chat.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's interesting. How about in Silver Blaze, huh?
Silver Blaze, you got
Yeah.
it,
He
right?
just goes
Because the
mad.
day before an important sporting event, the star player goes missing. Turns out, I mean, spoiler alert, it wasn't anything super nefarious on the part of whatever, but like it's one of those things like hijinks ensue, and there's a
Uh-huh.
ticking clock, and there's like we need to find him before. And honestly, the
And
denouement,
there's no crime.
right, right. Well,
I
there was a
mean,
crime. Yeah.
uh,
Anyway,
kind of a crime, but
Innocent
yeah.
not
Hunter.
really a crime.
But the climax of these stories are vastly different. And it's one of the reasons that I think that Silver Blaze is a superior, like a objectively superior story, is that man, there's such a great payoff at the end. Whereas this one, it's almost like a wah, wah.
Well, you get a different kind of drama at the end of this kind of more of this melodramatic scene, but part of that is what I notice in this is that for all this sports talk we're going to get, and now we're going to get it from Overton here, And they keep coming back to like, oh, is he gonna make the match? This isn't a story that ends with like, oh, and they find him and they bring him to the match and he managed this, like it's got not like unlike Silver Blaze, where you get that kind of big moment again where the big race still happens and you get
Mhm.
and Silver Blaze wins. We don't get that here because it's not a sports story. But
Right.
Silver Blaze, in a sense, is still a sports story or a
Hmm.
sporting story, maybe we'll call it. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Um, that's still a key part of it, but it's not a key part of this, even though we're going to get a lot of rugby talk from Cyril right now. Um, uh, who, when he comes in,
Cyril Connolly? Sorry, Erica Halfaby was on my view.
It's okay.
But he starts talking right away about rugby. Erica, you don't know rugby either, like me, right? So this was like, what do you like?
But you know what? It's okay because Holmes and Watson don't either. And at the end, so first off, there's that little nice connection. And at the end of the day, too, as we say, I mean, this isn't really about sports. It gives us a nice character in Overton, and his silliness and his babbling, and he's got some just kick-ass lines. My favorite line, maybe in the entire canon, an insult I would love to use someday, is he can't sprint for nuts. Like I am saving that one. That's brilliant. I love the way this guy talks. I love the way that he comes in and he is this, overwhelming character. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of people are put off by the fact that it starts with such a strong sports input, but it really isn't a sports story. It isn't as though, he was abducted because of his particular skills, in some way he was misused to promote some criminal enterprise or anything like that. You really don't need an understanding. And in fact, the lack of understanding, I think, from Holmes and Watson kind of adds to the connection that I feel, at least with this story.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just a framing device. That's
Yeah,
all it is.
But
yeah,
Doyle
exactly.
loves sports. I'm
Hmm.
sure he's played rugby and he
Yeah.
likes adding these details and adding this stuff. But in this case,
Watson played rugby. Watson played
well,
rugby.
he said he
Allegedly.
did, and then it doesn't seem like he did. This is a later
I think
story.
he
We won't
did.
get to this for another year or so. Yeah.
Anyway, I think he did. I'm gonna just put it out there. You don't actually have to know all that much about rugby or be current with the most like, he's a doctor now. He's put aside his childish things, right? And now he's an adult. He doesn't follow it. But at the same time, he also revels in letting Holmes just stew in it. He's like, "What? What?" Like Holmes is confounded for a moment. I'm just gonna zip it.
Well, he pulls out his letter S book for and looks up,
Yeah.
Staunton in it, and instead of the what we usually get from Watson or the unpublished cases, we get from Holmes mentions of other cases or other criminals here. Arthur H. Staunton, the rising young forger, Henry Staunton, whom I helped to hang, um, but no Godfrey and Overton can't believe this. Great
What a
Scott.
name, too.
Good
What a name.
Lord.
Godfrey Staunton.
Good
Doyle's good
Lord,
at
Mr.
that.
Holmes, where have you lived? And Holmes laughs at him and then he says, you live in a different world to me, Mr. Overton, a sweeter and healthier one. Uh and I think that's Doyle reminding his readers for people that, who might be like Holmes and don't play team sports or think that they're that important. It's not because they're not important and insignificant. It's just that Holmes doesn't engage in them. Holmes recognizes that that's a sweeter and healthier life than he leads. So, um,
That's a theme. That's a theme in this whole story too, is Holmes' addiction, his unhealthy habits. I'm actually a little surprised, but maybe I shouldn't have been, that it wasn't one of those stories that ends up with Holmes in a cloud of smoke that, Watson can't even breathe in the room. But it's, that Holmes is a master of the inner space. He's a master of ratiocination and the mental capacity, and that he is not adept at the outer space. And I don't mean outer space, but that is also something he doesn't care a lick about,
he can
right?
be very physical and he's great at single stick
Sure.
boxing and he can do these individual things that he's really good at. But this,
Because he's a superhero.
yeah.
But, but that's not his focus. His
No.
focus is, um, the study and the pursuit of justice and of crime and criminality.
And nothing
And
else matters, as Watson
right,
reminded us from the very beginning. But
he's
then,
carved off all the
as we
physical
always learn, Holmes is a true polymath and knows everything.
yeah,
It
when
wouldn't
it's
surprise
convenient to
you
the
if he
plot.
knew rugby inside and out because he had a case one. Now he will. Now he'll know rugby inside and out because he had a case involving it in some way, and he'll know about it.
Will he though? A question I'll put to you, Ed, is do you think he even cares a lick? Because it didn't
Yeah,
take any knowledge of
because
rugby.
he'll put it in the lumber room, and then he'll go get it when he needs it.
Oh, he doesn't have room in his attic, his lumber attic.
So,
But yeah, either way, Holmes is a superhero and has superheroic abilities, talents, and knowledge when necessary to the plot.
Eric, as a non-sportster, do we get to this point in the story? Come on, just get on with it. Get on with are you thinking like Max, like as the people only concerned with the kind of intellectual pursuits here that Holmes is on, that's what you want to get back to? I want to see them play a game too, but that's just me.
No, I kind of just enjoy Cyril Overton just coming in as sort of this like blustering, out of control. There's a reference Watson makes to there's all these repetitions and obscurities, and I had to clean up his story because he was making no sense. I'm just kind of enjoying. I'm just being along for the ride and kind of joining them in the okay. This is all just a little bit of chaos, and that's okay. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I love the way that he talks. I love the way that this character comes out. And Holmes is very relaxed throughout this entire encounter as well. I mean, he doesn't get baffled and overwhelmed and frustrated. He's just kind of smiling and, yeah, okay, well, just tell me your story. So yeah, I'm not put off by it.
The sporting and active portion of this story is bicycling again.
Yes.
It's what, the third of our trilogy of bicycling stories, after the Priory School, or Priory Scholars, or was it Priory School,
Yep.
Solitary Cyclist, and now Missing Three Quarters. They're all, great bicycle chase scenes.
We don't see the one in this. We've just heard about it. Like Holmes
Hmm.
tells the story a little bit, but yeah. So, and Doyle loved bikes, and
Hmm.
bicycling, and this is something new for him that he loves. And as soon as he discovers bicycling, it's in story. He loves putting it in stories and talking about it.
So I took off my rugby hat and I'm putting on my American football hat just for a moment, because I wanted to talk about one of my favorite dumb things to do, which is connecting the Sherlock Holmes stories to active and inactive players. There was a thread on the Hounds of the Internet. This is Christian Watson, the current quarterback, or sorry, current receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love
Uh-huh.
is the quarterback. But I had one I think you might
Actually, the
enjoy.
sealed cards too, dude.
You
The
might enjoy,
cards.
Ed.
Oh, look at
Can we
that,
see that?
Lester Holmes.
Lester Holmes of the Philadelphia Eagles. So yeah, we got a lot of Sherlockian connections. I've got a Luke Musgrave here, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Just this morning, Karen Murdoch on the Hounds was trying to connect, a baseball team. The Blue Jays and the Dodgers are in the World Series, and so the best we could come up with was the Toronto bootmaker. Was it Morton and Company, the bootmakers of Toronto? It wasn't Morton. It was, doesn't matter. But the Toronto bootmakers, are also, the local Toronto Science Society as well, and the or not no, sorry, it's the essentially the premier group of Sherlockians in Canada, not a science society, and that the Toronto Library there has a wonderful sitting room, and so I'm a Blue Jays bandwagon fanatic. And so the other connection to the canon is that the Dodgers used to be the Brooklyn Dodgers. There is a mention of Brooklyn in the canon in the red circle, but it's this type of very, very silly thing that I love about Sherlockians. And I'll show you my favorite Packers player. This is Max Magee, star of Super Bowl one, and my namesake, putative namesake. My parents had no clue that
What?
they were
No, they didn't
naming me.
name you for him? No, there
Nope,
you go.
nope.
Wow.
But anyway, that's yeah. That my football hat is off now. But remember, football used to mean rugby as well. So
It did. And first it was football, meaning what we call soccer, and then rugby develops from soccer, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly at the rugby school, someone picked up the ball and it was never the same game. That doesn't work because they would have been like, "Hey, put that ball down."
It just would have been a penalty. So not a new game.
Yeah.
So all right. I told well, everyone, welcome back to Rugby Monthly. We're turned down to Sports Monthly. That's fine by me. That is a rabbit hole I particularly enjoy, Max. Thank you. And that because I now like I'm running through my head like all the name players, and I'm already thinking of the World Series roster right now, and like, wait, there's got to be somebody.
All right, join us in the Hounds.
Yeah.
We all float down
So,
there, Ed.
remember that time when, Holmes went against the famed, Japanese Otani criminal? No, it didn't matter. So, um, um, well, Holmes, Godfrey tells the story that he's the skipper of the rugger team. As people talk about in the chat here, the word rugby is not actually mentioned. Rugger is the only mention of it, which is just it's just the nickname for rugby. It is interesting though that Doyle doesn't have to say rugby to know that his readers won't pick up that this is the game that's going on, or they're going to be in the Holmes camp and still not know what's going on. Like it kind of serves two purposes. Either you know what it is, so I don't have to mention it, like Overton, or you're like Holmes and you still have no idea what the heck this sport might be.
Well,
So
go back just a second. Yeah, rugby by name is not mentioned, but they call it football in the story.
yeah,
So rugby football is football.
yeah.
And so there are many mentions of football in this story, and it's not like they're not talking about rugby. We know that Blackheath and, rugby, um,
And
you
the
know,
description that he gave, people would understand that this isn't the kind of
right.
soccer football. This
Association
is
football.
rugby, association football. This is
Yeah.
what is it? International? Is that what it is?
Union.
Union football. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Feeling
it's
like
all the terms get mixed up. And remember, our term soccer comes from somebody just messing about with their terms. Association turned into soccer, university turned into varsity.
which is something I don't think I realized before this story. I'd forgot if I ever knew that, I didn't remember it. That
Hmm.
varsity is a abbreviation for university. Uh,
Hmm. Well,
yeah.
and this is a very common thing among high school, college athletes or secondary school, college athletes, where they will just make dumb nicknames out of each other. Like, I don't know, like there's Piggy, there's Bunny, there's, like all of these dumb names for each other. But sometimes you don't even come up with a good one, and they just call you like, it's Scott. It's like, Scott, or it's just you just add an to it. And so that's
Sure.
how association football became saga.
All righty. Maxer.
Maxa.
Uh, let's go on. Godfrey Staunton was visited by a rough-looking man with a beard. Was not me. I was nowhere near there. Um, and who he got a note from this guy. He read it. He fell back in a chair as if he had been pole axed.
Oh, such a line.
Yeah.
Yes. And yet another instance of beardism in the canon. I know it was of its time, but I'm sick of this beardism. It's time someone called this out.
Well,
The
we're
fact
at
that there are
the
no female characters at all in this
yeah.
story except the dead one um, doesn't bother me. But beardism really is a scourge in the
Especially in
canon.
the Victorian age when it's
Yeah,
it's the sign of majesty.
that's
So
right. Should be.
but not for Doyle. He was a clean shave. Well, he had the mustache, but clean shaven beard, man. So
Mhm.
um they And then Staunton just goes up missing right before the big match versus Oxford, Cambridge Oxford match, which is a real thing. The Cambridge Oxford
Oh, it's a huge rivalry.
football
Yeah.
match was a big thing. So
This is their Harvard, Yale, Army, Navy.
yeah.
I can't, the Bears, Packers.
Harvard Yale is only important to Harvard and Yale anymore.
Yeah,
So
well, but that's what I'm saying is among those colleges too.
yeah.
Like in this case, you're right. This was like a
But Army
national
Navy is
event.
still considered a big thing, but
Yeah, yeah.
there you go. But he is he mentions he said he wired Lord Mount James, and he'll come into the story later. One of the richest men in England, Holmes notices, or Holmes comments. Um, uh, he says the old boy, Overton says the old boy is nearly 80, cram full of gout too. They say he could chalk his billiard cue with his knuckles. Now, without annotations, I don't know what he's talking about. And I think what it led me to think is that something to do with how rich he is. I still don't understand it. But Erica, it is in the annotation, right? Klinger says, right?
It's in the annotation, and then also just some. I happen to have a book on gout by Roy Porter, of all people. He's a fantastic medical historian. You should read him if you haven't. But gout generally is it's a buildup of uric acid, and it tends to concentrate in your joints, like the smaller joints. So generally, people will get it like in the big toe. Some people will get it in their knuckles. And I think what it's a reference to is it causes extreme pain and extreme arthritis, and you can actually, at a certain point, you'll start to kind of excrete some of that uric acid through your skin. You'll get sort of this white chalky appearance on your knuckles. So him being able to grind a cue, yeah, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But the idea is, yeah, essentially he's so, just
Gouty.
tight in his ways. His whole body just embodies,
And the kind of metaphor
ham-fistedness.
that a sports guy like Overton would use,
Yes.
like he's thinking that right away. Like, oh, chalk up his billiard cues. That's how gouty he is. So
Yeah, there
Now,
was a comment in the annotation too about someone being able to keep track of their, yeah, Max, you're nodding. They were able to keep track of the score by just dragging their knuckles on what was essentially a chalkboard, which is so gross.
it's
So,
gross.
so gross.
I have a question about the chalking the pool cue. I think of it as like, you're chalking up the tip,
Yep.
but in this case, was it chalking up the handle so that you'd get a more like talc, so that you get a smoother play? Like
I
it
don't
just
know.
occurred to me that that would actually
Yeah.
make more sense that you rest it on your, gouty knuckles and you don't have to chalk it because it just does that. But these are crystals, right? These are sort of like your
They're crystals in the blood. By the
yeah.
time that you're actually excreting it through the skin, I mean, at this point, it's granules.
And it's little like
Tiny.
sand
Yeah.
grains that get inside of your joints.
Yep.
And so like imagine like a crusty little sand grain in your
Yep.
knuckle. Ugh.
It's extraordinarily painful.
It's a
Really, really bad thing
it's
to
a
have happen
royal
to you.
disease though, right? Like
Yes.
this is associated with the kings of England and
Yep.
Europe where
It's
they would eat
associated.
red wine. Go ahead.
A diet high in meat, in particular red
Mhm.
meat, is going to carry a lot of uric acid. Men in particular also are at risk for it because estrogen helps protect against gout.
Mm.
So men, unfortunately, you don't get the benefit of that. But yeah, for a long time, it's the rich man's disease, the patrician malady. It's something that those well enough to eat well are afflicted
yeah.
with.
And yeah, and it's a character trait of this person that he is
Yes.
so wealthy,
Of course
except
he'd
that
have
he's
gout.
also flinty,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Well, if you just joined us a few moments ago, welcome back to Gout Monthly. Well, we talk about the ailments of rich misers.
I
Um,
subscribe.
um, but actually, let me take this moment in mid-break to thank all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to hundreds of fellow Sherlockians worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and Sherlock Monthly by donation, which you could do at our website, or you could become a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, and early access to registrations, even if you can't visit the Rosenbach in person a lot, we have lots of online courses that many of them are out there still on for sale now that you could sign up for. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. We're also grateful to our show sponsors for this season, Lisa Washington, who sponsored the last couple seasons as well. Thank you, Lisa. And new this season, Belanger Books. Belanger Books publishes all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the to the 21st century. Explore the mysteries of 221B Baker Street, the horrors of Lovecraft's nightmares, and the wondrous worlds of H.G. Wells. Belanger Books has it all. You can visit them at belangerbooks.com. I'll put there.
If you haven't met Derek and Brian, seek them out. They are great guys too.
Yes.
If you have an idea for a book, man, they will make it happen.
Back to our story. We haven't even gotten the investigation yet, have we?
No, but I also want to correct myself. Madeline, thank you for that correction. There was a woman who had a speaking role in this story. I forgot all about the telegraph agent. What o'clock was it? To whom was it addressed? And then this is it. There's no name. That's it. Anyways, but a speaking role for a woman, my goodness. Progressive. Again, back to the beardism, even more evidence that we're
She had
being
no beard.
repressed.
What we don't get in this story, as I mentioned earlier, and this is, where I have it in my notes, so that's why I'm mentioning it now, is that Holmes, this doesn't become a sports story from now on. Now that we're really like we've had the sports talk from Overton, and now we're getting to the investigation, and this is where it kind of changes course. Well, I think the reader doesn't know it's changing course. What we don't get in the end is Holmes finds Staunton and brings him back, and the match is saved. That makes it a sporting story. What we get is something that turns into something else. And in Holmes's investigation, usually in a Sherlock Holmes story, at this moment, Holmes has already figured it out. In his mind, he's come up with a solution, and now he's just got to ask questions to put that together from the person giving it. And he asks him a bunch of questions here, and then he goes and starts investigating to put the rest of it together. And Watson's like, "Oh, I can't believe what's going on here. We could never solve this." And Holmes is like, "Nah, I think we're going to solve it. Don't worry." But he won't tell Watson anything
Watson's
until
never
the
read
end.
his stories before.
Yeah, until the end, he won't tell them. So, but here, I think even on your reread of it, or going through it again as we're going through, you can really tell that Holmes doesn't. He's truly investigating something here that is a rarer occurrence. I mean, it's not that it never happens, but it's a much rarer occurrence that he really doesn't know where this is heading. Um, uh, and first he has to go to talk to this porter, and to find out. And this is where he finds out about the telegram. There's also the mention here that's interesting that Watson says Sherlock Holmes was a past master in the art of putting a humble witness at his ease. And very soon he gets all the information he needs from the porter. That Holmes has these great interpersonal skills. And no matter who it is, he can get them to tell him what he needs for something until he encounters Leslie Armstrong later. But right now he's getting what he needs, finds out there's a telegram. And
You're
then
you actually hit on something that I hadn't actually delved into, the use of the term past master, right? This is a term that I've heard used in fraternities, something similar to in fraternities, but also in secretive societies like the Masons. The past master means that they're like the emeritus president of a lodge, essentially, that they used to be the most
yeah,
worshipful master or whatever, and that they're an old hand at this. Like they're maybe still involved, but they're retiring, letting the youngsters have their chance. But why is he a past master? He's still in his prime, maybe because we are now looking back in time. Like that's I'm not going to go into chronology, but like we're almost a decade out of Sherlock Holmes and Watson's activities in the
mhm.
1890s. We're in 1904, 1905 in some editions. And What does that mean, past master? Is it just
Erica,
that he's got experience?
Erica, anything on that?
I don't have anything in particular on that. I would just, yeah, I would imagine it's just a way of emphasizing not only is he good at this, he's the best at this.
Mhm.
And this is a skill that because it's interesting because a lot of modern adaptations have run with the idea that he's very, introverted and he's not good with people, and there's all these
Mhm.
social,
Yeah.
he has trouble with this. Um,
You don't get that in the
this
stories.
you don't get that in the stories at all. And even in contrast to kind of how the character was first introduced as maybe, this bizarre, eccentric man that you wouldn't think has any interpersonal skills at all. I think it's just a way of emphasizing like
Yeah.
this really is amazing, that this person has the ability to not only be, that eccentric, bizarre personality, but he has that wherewithal and that ability to just be an ordinary person and manipulate people as necessary. He's very, very keen to understand people's motives and their reasoning and what compels people. I mean, he reads people very easily. So I think the use of past master is more just a way of emphasize, rather than
Master
suggest.
Yeah.
of masters. Yeah,
Yes.
I think you're right. I think
And
that makes sense to me.
I think in spite of its origins, by now this has become a metaphorical term, meaning someone is exceptionally seasoned in something and has been for some time. And so,
Superlative sort
yeah.
of mastery. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, well, when Holmes finds out that Staunton has written a response or written a message to be sent as a telegram, he goes to the blotter. He does the trick where you rub something on it and you can see the there you go. Yo, you have a blotter.
It's my wife's actual blotter, by the way. And it isn't as cut and dried, so to speak, as you normally would, because you're going to use that blotter over and over and over. And
Yeah.
so, like,
Come on,
it
Godfrey's
must be
not
a new blotter.
writing. Godfrey's not a writer. He's a rugby player. So,
Yeah, yeah. He's only used it once.
And he's
Um,
moving in haste, right? This is
yeah.
an urgent message. He's very scared. He wants to get it out immediately. So
mhm.
I'd give him that license there.
Yeah, well, I certainly. I just I was really fascinated too by the ability of them to reproduce the handwritten image in both the Strand and Colliers, and that they're different too. You know, Ed, thank you for sending these out. I hadn't actually seen
Yeah.
that Colliers was different.
Here's the Strand one, and this can be seen in the manuscript. In the manuscript for the story, there's a couple at this moment in the manuscript. There's a couple little red sealing wax in there, but a blank. And what Doyle has done is he has created what you're seeing in the Strand on little strips of paper, and he's put them in there. And then when he sent the manuscript off, they were removed because well he removed them when he got it back because then he sent them along with the typescripts that he had made. The manuscripts don't go to the Strand. He has three copies, typed copies made. One of those goes to the Strand, and these illustrations, that he made likely went with him. Now, whether they may have redone it and traced over his writing. What's interesting is that's his handwriting. When you
Hmm.
compare that to the manuscript, that's Doyle's handwriting there, especially in the G and Gods here. It's
Yep.
absolutely the way he wrote. So they may have used those exact ones that he sent them and have them reproduced and printed in the magazine. And it's just the backwards and forwards. I have seen that they're not exact. They don't exactly line up. So people think that this may have been written backwards and this may have been written forwards. That seems unlikely to me. I know people can do that, but that seems unlikely. I think probably what happened is it was written out and then blotted and then traced over. The blotting was traced over. So I think any differences might be in the backwards one in tracing over the blotting that it kind of came looking a little not looking or the blot itself, I'm sorry, would look a little different because it was a blotted impression, not the actual thing. It's not a mirror, it's a mirror image, but it's not, from the same impression or,
Makes sense.
flip side of the impression.
Right.
Um, and in the but in the Strand, or I'm sorry, in the Collier's edition, they remake them. Because they just likely didn't have these reproductions. They weren't sent along, so they just redid them themselves. And so it's an entirely different illustration for it. Um, but the same word, stand by us for God's sake. And they, just put it real big here. And honest, and well, even as blotty as it is, a little easier to read than Doyle's was for the Strand. Talk about a guy who writes so well, but then when those came up, I had to really look at them and just like, wait, what does that
Yeah, it
say?
reminds me of the Dancing Men. Those were all Doyle's handwritten little
Yeah.
men. I wanted to call your attention too to this puzzle. If most of the Sherlockians I know have either had this puzzle or given this puzzle to someone else, but it's supposedly the Speckled Band. But there's a section in it which I find very reminiscent of our story today. The solution is actually printed in mirror image, and so you have to hold it up to a mirror in order to read the solution to the story of the Speckled Band puzzle. You're muted, Ed.
Yes. So back, you see, hold it up to the mirror and then it
Yeah,
turns.
and so I didn't realize that there was a story, or I didn't think about the connection between this story and that puzzle until now. So,
There you go. Well, um, the clue is stand by us for God's sake. So this is important. Holmes notices us, mark you, another person is involved. So what's the connection between Staunton and the bearded man? Why are they the us? Or is there another person? And then he says, what's the third source from which each of them sought for help against pressing danger? Who did he sell a telegram to saying to stand? Like who is this person who's supposed to be standing by? Um, Watson, we have only to find out whom the telegram is addressed. Exactly, my dear Watson. Your reflection, though profound, had already crossed my mind. He's so mean to
He is.
Watson sometimes.
He
I
really
feel like
is.
I already
th
thought of that, Watson.
this is the one where he calls him scintillating, though. Like, I actually
Uh,
don't think he was
Oh,
insulting
that's
him in
so
this one.
sarcastic when we get
yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Uh,
But here it's just basically, yeah, I thought of that. Don't worry. Of course I did. And now, but the problem is, who's gonna give them info of the telegram? Privacy. Come on. So much red tape in trying to find out who wrote a private telegram to someone.
Well, this is funny because there's two different things. There's sort of your assumption of privacy when you're interacting with a telegram company or like a telecommunications company. That's one thing. But then there's also the doctor-patient privilege here. Like this is maybe one of the stories that is the most offensive to those people who abide by HIPAA.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm not going to tell you about my patient. I'm going to find it out anyway. It's like, we're definitely reporting him.
Well, it also points out too that there's nobody knows there's been a crime committed.
Right.
And there hasn't been a crime committed. But at this stage of the game, Holmes doesn't even know himself. So it's, why would anybody help you if it's just to find somebody? That's clearly not what you're supposed to be able to do.
And he makes a mention about, well, if all else fails, we could try to get a warrant, but we
Yeah.
haven't reached that stage yet. Well, of course you
Yeah.
haven't. You haven't established that there's any crime. Good luck getting a warrant. You're never going to get a magistrate to sign off on that.
Well, here's where Lord Mount St. James comes breaking into the room. Well, Holmes is going through all the papers on the desk to figure out if there's any other clues there, and St. James arrives. Who are you, sir, and by what right do you touch this gentleman's papers? And when he finds out he's a private detective and he's been hired, right away it's don't ask me to finance this, not a penny. You understand that, Mr. Detective? This guy's a true miser. He even showed up in a bus. He took a bus to get to this place because he didn't want to pay for a cab. And one of the annotations in one of the books, I think it's in the Staunton Tragedy facsimile book, says gives you the cost of the bus and the cost of the cab would have been tiny.
He would have
So,
been missing about three quarters, is what it was.
yeah. Well, Holmes, because he's smart. Holmes suggests that, your wealth itself might be in danger. Maybe he was kidnapped so that people are trying to get info on him. And then he's like, oh, well, then of course I'll a five. And it's so he's only offered a fiver or a tenner to help, but it did open up his pocketbook when his, own, greed, miserliness was affected. And that's another illustration of Holmes recognizing right away, what can I say to get you to maybe help us a little? Now that's all he gets out of it, but Holmes doesn't want him in the way anyway, and he doesn't know anything, and so Holmes finds that out that he doesn't know anything, so he doesn't need anything else from him. Um,
I want to interject one thing before we actually make progress on the story, because that's my job. Um, broad pointed quill pen. Now, I don't think it would have actually been a quill. The idea here is that it was a broad nibbed pen, probably dip, but potentially a fountain pen. And this is one of those like writing implement things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've talked about the J pen, we've talked about all that other stuff. But in this case, he wished that it had been a pencil because then he could have done the etching thing where
yeah,
he could have, traced or traced the negative of the impression because they still had the pad that he wrote the telegram on. And so, like, I love writing implements in the canon. I can't help myself. But like, this is one of those that I think is overlooked often. But the blotting pad impression, the pencil versus pen, dip pen versus fountain pen, telegrams, I find this stuff all fascinating. This is yet another one of those cases.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Now he goes to the telegram office and he uses again. Well, not only he gets the name of the person who it's being sent to, by the questions he asks. Um, and it kind of tricks the young lady there at the telegram office to telling him. With but I like how he does it because she says, "Whom was it to?" And then he's like, "Oh," and then he whispers confidentially. The last words in it were, "For God's sake." Like, I can't tell you who because somebody might overhear. And then she's thinking like, "Ooh, this is a serious thing." So that's what causes her to give. Like, that's the thing he preyed upon, that this person would be okay with giving him that information if it was maybe something scandalous. But then he tells Watson, I had 7 different schemes for getting a glimpse of that telegram already. So I love that line. That's a very Sherlockian
The
line.
first scheme he had in mind was just seducing her, getting her to accept his hand in marriage, and just generally being, seductive, which, that's my Sherlock right there.
Yeah.
He decided to skip over that though, because it'd be faster just to trick her. Yeah.
Well, they find out who it's to, and it's to Cambridge and Leslie Armstrong, although they don't say that here. And they're off to Cambridge. And again, this is Holmes usually has it figured out. He doesn't. He has to go to Cambridge to figure this out. And that's a difference in a story here. Uh so they head there. Oh, and he does give a couple. He gives two, right? Two theories here. Um, it could be a betting thing, amateur sport. And because people bet on it, it's, they get him out of the game.
Mhm.
And also, but he's also the heir of great property of Lord St. James's or Lord Mount James's property. So
Right, unrelated to sport, but
yeah,
yeah.
he could have been kidnapped. These theories take no account of the telegram, Watson says, but says, well, yeah, but that's the only thing we have to go to deal with. So not necessarily a diss on Watson, but you know,
It's funny. I didn't read these as sarcastic, and you're totally right. They were sarcastic, but I was just like, oh, he's being nice to Watson to this thing. Oh well.
and you're scintillating. No,
Yeah, I love
wasn't
that. I
serious.
love that. But you're right, it's sarcastic. Didn't you follow it, Holmes? Boy, you're real smart there, Watson. That would have been a good idea.
Well, they go and visit the house of Dr. Leslie Armstrong. And we get a mention here from Watson about how he's lost touch with his profession. That so, Leslie Armstrong was unknown to him. That's an unusual, little personal note, I thought, about Watson that kind of situates the story and lets us know that Watson's now just been living with Holmes, not doing anything except going on cases with him.
I love that description of Armstrong too. This is one of the best ones in the canon. There's a guy who they described as cheese-faced. Other than that, I think this one, his square, massive face, brooding eyes under thatched brows, he needs to get those dethatched, and a granite molding of the inflexible jaw. I just love that.
Yep. And it makes him seem formidable and
Hmm.
somebody that Holmes is really going to have to battle with, and he does.
He's an edifice that has to be overcome.
He
Yeah.
tells Holmes right away he doesn't care for him as a private detective.
Or about sport.
Yeah,
Like you could care less.
Holmes. I like Holmes's response here that he is well, because he pries into the lives of Sikh, and Holmes is like, I don't do that. And he says, you may look upon me simply as an irregular pioneer who goes in front of the regular force of the country. I had never linked up that phrase with the Baker Street irregulars that he uses for the children. And I'm sure Morley was also aware of this phrase as well as the irregular pioneer and the regular force of the country, um, before he came up with Baker Street irregulars. Uh, yeah, that Holmes is this person who goes out in front of the police to make sure that, or to go over the ground and clear the ground and really make it easier for the police to do their job, which is honestly what he does in his cases. Um, they have this back and forth though, where Holmes tries to get info. Fail. Armstrong won't tell him anything. Then Holmes is like, well, what if there's a public reveal because you wouldn't tell me? That fails. Then Holmes even literally threatens to call the police on him because of, he's disappeared and you're withholding information. And Armstrong still that fails and he won't tell him anything. He just keeps getting angrier. Like for all Holmes's interpersonal skills, he fails consistently with Armstrong to get any information from. He doesn't have the key to unlock Armstrong here. Um, and and then even when they leave, this perplexed me in the beginning. Um, Dr. Leslie Armstrong is certainly a man of energy and character, said Holmes. I have not seen a man who, if he turned his talents that way, was more calculated to fill the gap left by the illustrious Moriarty. And my first comment was like, what? Like, Moriarty? Is that the level of this story? Is that what we're dealing with? An arch nemesis in some
He's
way?
a match to his wits. That's it. That's what it is that he and Holmes are going, slugfest, right? They're going,
Hmm.
you know, punch for punch or whatever it's called, where Holmes dishes out his best, and it is not only rebuffed, but Holmes gets the worse of the encounter. And
But
so he says,
comparing him to the most dangerous man in the world?
I guess,
It,
yeah.
it
I
could
mean,
also be an attempt to save face in front of Watson, right? He's just been thoroughly masterminded by this guy, thrown out without any information, and the
mhm.
best way for him to turn around and say, "Well, of course he's a Moriarty type. What could you expect? Of course I was going to fail that." It certainly could have just been an attempt to inflate the other so that his failure here doesn't seem as much of a failure.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, or he's going through withdrawals and he's just
Yeah.
pissy. This guy's a freaking Moriarty over
Yeah.
here.
What can I do? Um, Well, they go back to the stay at their inn, and then Holmes goes out, comes back late. He still hasn't figured it out. He failed. Watson notices that he doesn't. He looks exhausted. Um, has his pipe to think about what's going on, and then and then starts talking to Watson about this case again. He goes out in the carriage. Why does he go for a long carriage ride? He's not a doctor in practice. He shouldn't need that. He applied to the coachman. Holmes got nowhere with the coachman. Uh,
Relations were strained after that.
yes. With the neither the coachman put his dog on Holmes, but neither dog nor man liked the look of my stick, however. That's the only way that he's, gotten through escape that. And this is where Watson mentions about the carriage. Could you not follow it? Excellent, Watson. You are scintillating this evening. The idea did cross my mind.
I can't believe I used to admire this guy.
Yeah.
Can I
Sure.
just say, this is the story where we get, it looks like 6 My Dear Watsons. And not only that, we have an exactly My Dear Watson, which is almost elementary My Dear Watson. It's not quite there, but like My Dear Watson is happening in this story.
I've been writing an essay on my dears in this in the canon that I still have to go back and finish it. But yes, I've talked about this in the past too. The amount of times he uses dear or my dear and how this happens and other characters using it, and Holmes is really one that uses it a lot. And it used to
Mhm.
be an accepted, phrase, but it kind of fell out of fashion
Mhm.
with men talking with each other, but Holmes definitely uses it, and it's usually a sign of his deep affection for Watson. But sometimes it takes on this kind of
It's eye
sarcastic
rolling.
tone. Yeah.
Oh, my dear Watson.
So, um, he tried to follow him with a bicycle, and he failed him, and that failed. And he
We
knows
get another dog, though. I didn't pick that up until you mentioned it again, but
there is
there's
another
another
dog
dog.
in the story. Yeah. So there's two dogs in the story. Well, one you see, one you just hear
Yep.
about.
Yep.
The But he knows that Armstrong must know where Staunton is, and he's keeping it from him. And so he says, at present, it must be admitted that the odd trick is in his possession, and as you are aware, Watson, it is not my habit to leave the game in that condition. I love that he's using that. I mean, as a sporting story, right? And
Yes.
Holmes might not know rugby, might not play, team sports, but he's out to win. He's very competitive. He understands that mindset. He is as fierce to win a game as any rugby player is in his own, in his own field, on his own pitch. Well, now this is what then really made me understand the Moriarty thing that Doyle had thrown at us. Well, Holmes threw at us, through Doyle. Um, Armstrong sends a taunting letter. I can assure you that you are wasting your time and dogging my movements. Your time
Another dog.
Your time in Cambridge will say yes, and think of the irony of that. Holmes uses a dog to track him. I can use maybe this is how I got the idea. Aha, a dog. Yes, that's what I'll do. Your time in Cambridge will certainly be wasted. And Holmes says, an outspoken, honest antagonist is the doctor. But this idea that Armstrong, like Doyle has set up Armstrong as a very formidable opponent to Holmes, who even compares him to Moriarty. And I think what this is doing is this is keeping alive the idea that some great crime has happened in this story. And that's what we're pursuing. And not only does the reader think that, but Holmes thinks that too. Holmes thinks that there's some horrible crime that has happened that I have to discover. Why does he think it's a crime? Because this guy's like Moriarty, so it must be a crime. And and then the story kind of, blows that out of the water at the end with the solution that there was no crime, and that everybody was kind of acting honorably in the things that they were doing. So so that's why I think he brings the name Moriarty. It's Doyle's double downing on this is a criminal story here. You have to believe that up to this point. And
He's laying that
yeah,
red herring trail for
yeah.
us, right?
Which I think completely works. Now I don't know about first time readers, but I think it must completely work in this story.
You just reminded me. that I just had this custom made. I had to share it because it's so dumb. But this has like 7 different entendres, and I don't know if you look closely, you can see why. That's houndstooth, by the way.
Oh,
It's a
houndstooth.
Mhm.
I
it's a
understand.
gigantic footprint of a gigantic hound. And what is the game but a
A
paw?
foot.
So anyway,
That's
that's
beautiful.
my newest bumper sticker. My wife said that is so dumb, and I was like, I can't argue with you. But yeah,
Now is when we get the actual dog in the story that we were teased with on the cover of the Colliers. We saw it in the first picture, and it's Pompey. Um,
a drag hound, right? Not a sleuth hound.
yeah, a drag hound. And for those, oh, well, before that, we find out that the game was lost. The match was lost.
The
Oxford won by
blue.
a goal in 2 tries. So Staunton's missing from the game did affect his team, and they lost the game.
And there actually, if I can, there's a theory, not mine. Someone much smarter than me came up with the idea that it's interesting that Holmes's investigation suddenly becomes successful after this match is lost, and
Mm.
perhaps a certain somebody may have placed a bet with this insider information
Hmm.
and decided to kill 2 days in Cambridge, accomplishing essentially nothing, waiting for the outcome of this match.
Hey,
Throwing
I,
it out there.
Well, I think again in Silver Blaze, very similar circumstances, right? I think Holmes placed a bet on Silver Blaze to
he
win,
Yep.
right?
did.
So, and I don't think it would be too
He did it in
or
Silver
out of
Blaze, knowing that Silver Blaze was going to be back in the race. He bet on him.
right. And so he bet against the light blues because he wasn't going to show up.
Well,
One way or another, he wasn't going to show up.
you got to go to the illegal bookie for this, though. So at least in Silver Blaze, you could place a legitimate legal bet. In this case, you
Right.
have to go
They're
to the
amateurs.
illegal bookies. Of course, but Holmes knows them all, and
I have a feeling too,
he knows all the
Watson might know a
criminals.
guy.
Yeah, Watson is the guy.
Yeah,
Uh, Two
Watson,
questions
place a
for you.
little bet here, and when you're
Have
right
you
up this
guys
case, don't
have you
include.
guys read either of you read Raffles?
Yeah.
Only a little.
Okay. So this is where I'm definitely getting Raffles vibes about the amateurs versus the professionals versus or what is it, gentlemen versus amateurs versus where you may not be paid for it. That's one of the big differences between was it rugby union and league rugby in the North is that the folks in the North needed to make a living, and so they insisted on being paid for their time, or rather, they wouldn't have played because they had to support a family. And so, in order to get those miners, those factory workers, etc., from like Manchester, wherever, to come and play the sport, they had to be paid for the time that they weren't working, or they wouldn't have been able to do it. Whereas the union were the gentlemen, right? And so the gentlemen and the players, and there's this constant, like again, rugby union is for the folks that don't need it. They're at Oxford, they're at Cambridge. Whereas you've got the real, I don't know, like hard-nosed folks up in the north that are working class, and they need to be paid or else the league is going to fall apart. And this reminds me a little bit of that he eschews the sport for something more important,
Yeah.
and he's not going to be able to be there because he has to be here at his wife's
Yeah.
deathbed.
If this was a raffle story, he would have already have found him and would have let him know to wait a little
Yeah, that's right.
before while Raffles could bet on the match and win, and then he would have
Right.
revealed him. He would have gotten paid for finding him and his winnings from the match because that's a
Yeah.
raffle story. Uh,
Yep.
but Holmes is out to find him, and Doyle is crafting a story here where it's not about the sport, and so we're going to find out what's going on here now. Um the before Pompey appears, though, Watson is horrified at finding Holmes in the morning with his holding his
Tiny,
hypodermic syringe.
tiny hypodermic.
um, he sees it glittering in his hand. Um, and Holmes laughs and says, "It's not upon this occasion the instrument of evil." And he's also being a little sarcastic and saying that to Watson because Holmes doesn't think it's evil. Um, Cocaine, I mean. Uh, um, and it is because they now they get the dog, a squat, lop-eared, white and tan dog, something between a beagle and a foxhound. And Pompey is a draghound, and the syringe is filled with was filled with aniseed, which he put on the wheel of the carriage.
We
And
tried this before, right? We tried this in Sign of Four with Toby and creosote.
and it failed because the water, because once, or no, he got to the
No, because there was
barrel.
another creosote
Yeah.
carrier, truck that rolled by, and Toby's like, "Well, that smells more like creosote." But yeah, and in this case, we go with aniseed oil because there's nothing dogs love more than aniseed,
And that's
black
what
licorice.
drag hounds are used for. If drag hunting is not actual hunt, what they would do is they would drag this aniseed along the ground, and then the dogs would chase it, and they would all be on their horses like they're on a regular fox hunt. But at the end,
Mhm.
it was just that's it. There's no kill at the end. It's just it's exercising the dogs. It's you getting the exercise of riding on the horse for a hunt. And there's no just destroying this tiny little, animal at the end of it. Not a real hunt either, because you're not using the animal or anything. And and it was and I think it's still done. Actually, they can still do it now that they've outlawed fox hunting in most of England or all of England. This is still legal because it's not hunting. It's you're just exercising the dogs and the horses.
Mhm.
Um, and So Pompey's been trained to do this, and he does it, and they're able to follow. Uh, Holmes discovers that he wasn't able to make any discoveries on his own because Armstrong's been making a big detour and coming back. So Holmes didn't know that. Uh, and This is that illustration at the beginning of the story where they have to crouch down because they see him just before the end, and they get to the cottage, and the lonely cottage, it's called. And hear the low sound, a kind of drone of misery and despair, which was indescribably melancholy. And I like this very brief sentence here. Holmes paused, irresolute. Suddenly, Holmes doesn't know what to do. Um, and I think it's because he's been on the trail of a crime. And suddenly he's at the end of the line here and he realizes, oh, this is something. And I think he can put it together in his head, the end scene that he'll see here. But oh,
I
this is
think
what it is.
I thought that was Holmes hearing the distant hoofbeats and knowing that he had a countdown. Like this
Well,
was,
it says he paused irresolute and then he glanced back at the road and he sees the Brougham coming back. But what he hears is what caused him to be irresolute.
mm, I'm not sure about that. I'm not disagreeing. I'm
Yeah.
just saying the way I read it was he has superhuman hearing. He heard it before Watson, and so he just does one of these, and then Watson hears it, and then there's urgency.
If
But
there's ever a character who almost always has resolve, almost always knows what he's going to do next, it's Holmes. So I
Mhm,
think that for Doyle to point out that there's a moment, there's a pause moment, that's not something that's usually happening with Sherlock
mhm,
because he always knows ahead of time what he's going into. He's already figured it out. And
mhm.
here, this is the case where he hasn't figured it out. Um, this is one of those, in a sense, failed cases, right? In that he didn't solve it. He just followed somebody and found out what was happening. He never really solves it.
And yet he got to the bottom of the mystery. I think he
The
solves this.
dog got to the bottom of the mystery.
Okay. Right. Well, if you give Holmes credit for knowing that dogs can follow a scent, which I think uh-oh. Oh, I thought we lost you. Then again with Sign of Four, with this one, that like I feel like this is yet another tool in a detective's arsenal, and that Holmes is this one I would certainly not put up there with the criminals got away. The person we were trying to protect
Well, because
died.
there's no crime.
No,
But
but there was never an implication that it was a crime. It was a mystery.
in Sign of Four, he uses Toby because he knows there's been a murder and he knows I'm tracking a murderer. Here, he's using
Hmm.
a dog because I don't know what has happened and I need the dog to
Yeah.
help me find out what happened.
Well, and the dog lets him down in the sign of four. Let's not
Yes.
forget. And yet he still finds the solution to the crime. We've had way weirder mysteries than this. Like we've had one that was
Yeah.
like some lady had a haircut. Like that is the mystery we're trying to solve, you know? So like I don't think a missing persons case is below him, beneath him.
Oh, it's not, but
And he found him.
but there was absolutely no crime that happened. And instead we get this kind of emotional,
Other than a HIPAA violation, as I
no,
said, you
yes.
know.
We get this emotional denouement at the end of the story here. Um,
Yeah.
what did you think of this ending, Erica, when he comes and discovers that this is what this has all been leading to?
So I had a pet theory for a while, and it's shared in the Staunton tragedy. There's a whole essay about it that the fact that this woman is alleged to have died of consumption, which is tuberculosis, generally this very romanticized illness. I mean, you come on to this scene she's described as beautiful, and her hair is just, oh, this is so tragic and so sad. Um, there's a decent argument that she probably didn't die of consumption. She probably died of something a little bit more scandalous. And it could have been that she died in childbirth. It also could have been that she died as a result of having an abortion, which would have explained kind of the urgency, and certainly why this would have been, so tragic and so despairing, but also why he would have needed to cover it up. So I kind of look at it with that view that this is definitely it's heartrending. I mean, to see this poor man in such misery. Um, I do find though kind of interesting that that little mystery about I think Watson is covering something up. I do think that there's something greater going on here, and this whole ending has been romanticized and cleaned up a little bit for the sake of protecting both of the parties' reputations and interests. I
Which
don't
is
think
a theme
to
that happens in this story because this is then when Holmes even goes and talks to, Armstrong about like, I'm not about revealing people's personal secrets. Now, on the surface, it's that Godfrey married, in secret to this landlady's daughter, and he's going to inherit this great fortune, and that's, in a sense, scandalous in the social strata. But but for Doyle, I mean, and I know playing the game that this is kind of interesting and it works, but for Doyle, Doyle could be hinting at his readers that there is something unusual going on here that I'm not revealing, and that readers might pick up on this, like what you're saying right away. They're like, oh, it must have been something else. But that he uses consumption or tuberculosis, I think would be not the way he would do it because this is literally what his wife is dying of, as when he's writing this story. And I would think that to use that as the device did make it real for the author in putting this story together. That in his mind, he's not trying to suggest anything that it might not be because I'm using this specific disease that I'm watching my wife die of and have been for the last few years.
yeah.
Well,
It is a little bit interesting though with consumption. What would require Armstrong to make daily visits to her?
Yeah.
Because the treatment for late stage consumption is palliative, right? It's administering laudanum, it's keeping the patient comfortable and recognizing this is it. And they did have enough awareness of contagion that a doctor in who's not in general practice, who is old himself, he's going to want to distance himself from that patient and not be routinely in the same environment, breathing the same air exposed to her. So it also to me just kind of hints at there had to have been something a little more driving, the need for this expert physician to routinely go and visit this person every day and check in on them.
Yeah.
Consumption,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and not only that, but if we think about the sort of chain of events that led to Staunton being there, is uh, Armstrong is trying to keep him away. He's saying, she's fine, go live your life, right? And that it's the girl's father, the girl whose name we actually do not ever know, which again, we also don't know the name of the woman who worked at the telegraph office. But again, I'm offended by the beardism. Um, he writes or telegrams Norton, says come at once, basically, right? That
Or he leaves a note for him at the
she's
thing.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's then not lured out, but he believes that he needs to be there to see her final breath,
Yeah.
apparently, you know. And um, it, if he had just left a note like I can't, I'm leaving, you know, like I there wouldn't have been a mystery either. It would have been
Yeah.
he's a jerk, like you know, the captain would have, or the skipper rather, would have been annoyed with him, but you know, there wouldn't have been a call for Holmes to be there. So I thought you were going to go somewhere else, Erica. I thought you were going to say that Armstrong was hired by the who's the rich guy? What's the so
Lord
Lord
Mount James.
James to kill this woman so that his son would be able to be free of encumbrance, or his son, his heir, would be free of encumbrance and could marry, you know, to the station that he hoped he would marry, and that, you know, a landlord's daughter was not a proper match for someone who's going to inherit a Hearst-like fortune.
It is unusual that Armstrong wants to prevent him from coming. Like if he doesn't come, that if he
Right.
does his game, he's going to miss her dying.
Hmm. Well,
And
and why is
Armstrong
Armstrong
knows
trying to
this.
keep
Armstrong
him
knows that she's
away?
dying.
I
So
think Armstrong's a poisoner. You know, I think this is the obvious conclusion. There could be, you know, there's really it's implied, it's heavily implied in the
yeah.
text.
I like
Well,
it.
we get the and we get the irony here too when Holmes talks about how, that like, look, my job is I don't I solve crimes, but I'm always concerned with preventing with trying to hush up private scandals. I don't want to give them publicity. And we've seen this in plenty of stories. Even when there's been crimes committed, Holmes hushes it up. But of course, the great irony is that well,
7 years later.
we're reading about it right now. You mean Godfrey Staunton, the great rugby player, that he did this? So, but that aside, Holmes usually does, what the impression we get from the stories is he does try to hush these things up. And is it enough to believe that what he's hushing up is just that he married the landlady's daughter? And or is it something more serious? And I think it's easy for a reader to believe that there must be something else going on here. I don't think so because of the way Doyle put it together. But there's also the other biographical note too that Doyle Doyle's father met. Doyle's mother was the landlady's daughter that his father
Hmm.
met and married. So, like, that's a weird thing that I think maybe has subconsciously entered this story from Doyle and didn't realize that he was writing that. So,
Hmm.
but I think it means that there's a greater biographical connection to the tuberculosis too. That's a tragic thing for Doyle to write about and to show a scene with this big, strapping man lying on a bed mourning over the death of his wife, as Doyle knew was going to happen to himself one day.
Hmm.
And
Godfrey Staunton as stand-in for Doyle. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good case you made.
and Doyle's he's a he's a big sportsman and does
Hmm.
this and of course he would drop everything and run to her bedside. Um, uh, would tell his mistress, not mistress, that I have to go home to see my wife. Uh, and then as this ends, we get the story, and then we get like almost we get just two other lines. Holmes grasped the doctor's hand. Come, Watson, said he, and we passed from that house of grief into the pale sunlight of the winter day. And he gives us this little poetic ending to it that's not there's nothing humorous. There's nothing, oh, we're off to Baker Street. You don't get any other explanation of what happened to characters. There's no coda to this. Doyle just gives this nice little poetic ending, which, this time that I read I almost think it made the story so work so much better for me in that even though there was no crime and it was just suddenly he finds out what happened, that it did have some real emotional impact for me this
Yeah.
time.
I think
Hmm.
it's effectively done. And it kind of does leave, I mean, what do you say in a situation like this where you've come across someone that is just destroyed emotionally? What is there to say? Nothing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how we end it. So no, I think that's very artfully done. My only complaint about the resolution of the story is the fact that we have the discussion with Holmes and Armstrong clarifying, well, no, I don't work for Lord Mount James, and from there, that one fact unravels the whole story.
Yeah.
By my count, we had at least three prior opportunities for that information to be communicated.
Yeah.
And we just had the sitcom problem here of like, all sitcoms could have been resolved in 3 minutes if the characters just spoke to each other.
Yeah.
Sure.
We had that here. Um, from the very first meeting, Holmes could have stuck his foot in the door and said, "Wait a minute, nope, not Mount James, not going on here," and the whole mystery would have been resolved. We had the interaction with the passing the bicycle, we had the letter, we had so many opportunities for that to be clarified, and it just never happened. So it's a bit of a letdown for me just on that
Yeah.
topic. Like I think, come on.
It's just a
But no,
stilted, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
and
but the artistry of it and the poetry of kind of how this ended, I do think is quite beautifully done.
I actually like that about it in a sense, because what happens is, especially when you go back and see it, you see Armstrong being so resolute, and so, but what he's doing is he's preventing anyone from learning about this indiscretion, as I'm sure he thinks of it as, of Staunton's, and that kind of other layer there makes it more believable, his behavior, but also makes it more believable that Holmes thinks he's hiding something criminal, not necessarily just this secret marriage.
Hmm. You
Which
remind me, actually, there was a question in the chat a while back about why we forgive Holmes his sort of rudeness or his abruptness, as I would term it. And it's because he doesn't obey the social contract when it gets in the way of solving a case.
yeah,
And in this case, that's exactly what you were referring to, Erica, is that Armstrong could have just revealed, hey, like we're on the same side here, um, go away. But he didn't because it wouldn't be socially acceptable. Like he didn't want to give away that information. And so like that is another reason, again, an argument for breaking those social contracts.
And I'm actually talking about Holmes, not because there's several times where Armstrong is making reference to go back to your employer, don't talk to Lord Mount
Mm,
James, blah
mm.
blah blah blah. That
Right,
was
right.
the opportunity for Holmes to say,
Gotcha.
stop,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
employed.
yeah.
And he didn't take it
right.
at any of those. He knows this is a priority for the doctor, and he never corrects him on that. That to me is kind of
Hmm.
the I totally understand the doctor's position. That I don't have any issue with that.
Hmm.
I think Holmes missed some good opportunities, and again, maybe he had a good reason to stall the investigation just a little bit.
Yeah, so we could poison her.
Is that your letdown, Max, that we didn't find out that she was poisoned?
No, I just think that's a much better explanation. As opposed to, oh, she's slowly wasting away. If I can just, delay Holmes by one more day by making him bicycle home. No. That doesn't track to me. No, I think that Holmes was laid off the scent just long enough as he was dogging the doctor for the final coup de grace. And so I think it was Jim in the chat mentioned that, was it George the Sixth? I'm not remembering which uh, royal it was. Jim says George the Sixth. The physician actually ended his suffering by administering like a fatal dose of, I think it was laudanum or opium, that just essentially stopped the breathing of the
Mhm.
king because he was like, oh, well, I didn't want them to have to worry all day. And so again, I think Armstrong probably was, as you say, palliative care, right? But if they're not getting better,
Well, my only, thing that I will, like, we didn't get the match. Come on, you don't talk that much about about rugby early on and not give me the payoff. I want to see the match. So
Well, and again, that's Silver Blaze. There is a climax. I
yeah,
think that's what this story really lacks is there is no climax. There's a
yeah.
denouement, as you say, but it is a letdown rather
Mhm.
than a crescendo.
All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining in for episode 42 of Sherlock Monthly. Erica and Max,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I throw in one last little bit of
Oh, you
trivia
have
we
another
didn't
one?
get to?
Yeah.
All right. There's a comment early in the story about asking if Godfrey has ever been known to be ill, and the statement, no, he's been laid up with a hack. And in the annotations, they talk about the hack is not a cough, it's not a cold, it's not something like that. It's a shin injury
Mhm.
because rugby at that time, you could kick people's shins very hard, and that was completely lawful. There was no problem there. I want to point out for anyone who's interested, and of course, as you do have access to YouTube, there is still to this day an international shin kicking competition that takes place. I am absolutely serious. It takes place every year, usually in South England or Southwest England, but it comes from the Cornwall tradition of people would literally get into fights and settle it by kicking each other in the shins. And you can find videos. It's hysterical to watch. The your safe word basically is sufficient. If you've had enough, you say sufficient. It's done. It is the most entertaining thing I think I've ever seen. It's held
Good
annually.
Lord.
Please check it out. It
The
is so
best
so
thing since
cool.
cheese rolling.
Yes, yes. The land of unbelievable sports and things you would never imagine are sports. The international shin kicking competitions. You can view them. I've seen several on YouTube. They're quite entertaining.
Hacking's illegal, right?
It is
Well,
now.
well, so again,
But
remember
it
that this
wasn't
is one of
then.
the things that the association football banned was hacking. And the rugby players were like, absolutely not essential to the sport. Um, but I do want to point out that there is one player who his main character trait is that he was really good at this. This is Shinwell Johnson. He could not be hacked.
Yes.
Wow.
I love it.
Eric, I can't believe there's actually like a
Oh
hacking.
yeah.
That's like we're not going to play hockey, but everybody has to dress as a hockey player, throw down the gloves on the ice and fight, and that's all we're going to do.
Yes.
Now, I would watch that, absolutely. But
Yeah.
just kicking each other.
Yep.
Wow.
You
In the
grab each other by the
shin.
shoulders
The
and you kick each
worst.
other's shins until one of you says sufficient.
What if you break a shin? Oh my God.
It's the cost of playing the game. It's a great time. So
Great time to watch. There you
yes. Yes, absolutely.
go.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
That was a good one more thing. You pulled a Columbo at the end. One more thing. You had to mention that shin kicking. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Jim points out it was George V, monarch, who was poisoned by a combination of cocaine and morphine on his deathbed by his doctor, Bertrand Edward Dawson, 1st Viscount Dawson of Penn, GCVO, KCB, KCMG, PCFRCP.
All righty. The Van Helsing end to a name there.
Salad.
Well, Erica and Max, if you have
Ed,
nothing further, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us
we
on
rest
this
our case.
Yes.
Biblioventure. We will return next month with the next story, The Adventure of the Abbey Grange, with
Mm.
co-hosts Lindsay Fay and Ashley Polishek. So that will be really awesome.
I'll be
Absolutely.
tuning in.
Thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Monthly, Lisa Washington, and thank you to Belanger Books, publishing all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, solar ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. You can visit them at belangerbooks.com. We couldn't do these shows also without the generous support of you, our patrons. You can support the Rosenback through donation. Your support helps us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You could also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenback.org. Again, let me remind everyone to subscribe to our channel, to like these videos, and thank you all for watching this ongoing series. Max has behatted again for the end. And I will see you all next month. And where's my credits? There we go. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where the game is always a book. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.